Hello and welcome to episode 294 of The Crate and Crowbar. It is the 11th of September 2019. My name is Chris Thurston and joining me this evening is Alex Wiltshire.
Hello.
Tom Francis.
Hello.
And returning to the podcast, Martin Davies.
Hello, and thank you.
Hello. This is weird for me for a few reasons. One, I don't live in this house anymore.
No, it's mine now.
And you do. Welcome back, Marsh.
Thank you. Yeah, it's good to be back.
In a big empty room where we used to record the podcast, and the only furniture left is the podcast microphones.
Yeah, I should probably do something about that, but realistically, I'm never going to. It's going to be barren for a long time.
There are about 3,000 less Warhammer miniatures in this room than last time.
Right, yeah. Last time I think I was on the podcast, I talked about the peril of moving house when you have so many plastic children. And I'm still feeling that pain. It's been weeks, but it just happens constantly. Help. Marsh, you're back though.
I am, yeah. I went to a Boots the other day, and the lady in it was so unwilling to serve me. It was, there's none of that, how you doing, have a nice day stuff. It was just your item pushed slowly across the desk by somebody giving you a stare that instantly reduces your core temperature by about 20 degrees. And it felt good.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
I love in the States, sometimes you have like a very straightforward transaction and they say back to you, perfect. Wow. Holy shit. I don't know if I've ever had a perfect interaction, but I'm willing to go with it if you are.
Perfect Starbucks. Good. Well, we should do the podcast, I suppose, that we've become accustomed to doing.
Does he know how to do one still?
Let's find out.
Yeah, okay.
No, I don't really. I've actually, I'm so unpracticed at talking about games that I actually made notes, and the first item on the note says, you're a box. Can you guess what game I'm talking about?
You're a box.
I did tell you before the podcast, so, I mean, you should remember.
I wasn't listening.
You're not a box though.
It is good to be back.
You're not a box.
No, you're a box.
No, you're not a box. You do the boxes.
Oh, you see, we're talking about
Wilmot's warehouse.
You're a warehouse man, and your name is Wilmot.
You're very clearly a Wilmot.
You are essentially a box, though, with a face.
Aren't we all?
Yeah. Isn't everything in Wilmot's warehouse?
Yeah.
I should say quadrilateral cowboy.
Yeah, that's the one.
But it's very good. And you probably already know about it from Philippa War's excellent trailer for it.
Yeah.
It's a genuinely very good trailer.
Yeah,
It is a good trailer.
I know, it's really annoying
We are
because
saying that.
I'm not going to be able to explain it as well as she does in 2 minutes. It's about the most perfect encapsulation of that game, and possibly also Pip that you can see in 2 minutes.
I think it's the first game trailer. Pip's first two kind of commercial game credits have arrived within weeks of each other.
Yeah.
Because the first was Dicey Dungeons and the second is that trailer, I suppose.
And turns out she's really good at both of the things that she's done for games.
Yeah. One was editing the script for Dicey Dungeons and the other was that, yeah. But it is good. They invested and they got big Pip energy.
Yeah, they certainly did. So you're a box with a face.
You're Wilmot.
I feel like you've fallen.
How can a box arrange the boxes? If the boxes were able to arrange boxes, you wouldn't have to do anything.
You're visually depicted as a box with a face. However, you work in a warehouse, and your only goal is to organise all the stock in the warehouse. And so stock comes in, and you move it wherever you want. They're also boxes. And then periodically you're asked to collect the things that you've carefully aligned around the warehouse and take certain items to fulfill certain orders at a kind of dispatch window at the top. And that's really the entire game. And looking at it, you might think, oh, this is like a trivial sort of go to my happy place meditative sort of game. But for one thing, I find it really fucking stressful.
I found it really, really stressful.
But also, it's doing really interesting things with sort of mnemonics, like the way that you mnemonically categorize things and then recategorize them based on new items coming in that challenge your definitions of how you've grouped things previously. All the boxes that come in, they have logos or symbols on them of varying levels of abstraction. So it's sort of up to you to interpret what the items are. and then you have to place them somewhere where you will remember to find them later. And this means that you end up doing things like, obviously, first of all, I'm going to put all the flowers together. And then I guess these things that look a bit like a bee sting and a thing that looks like a beetle, they'll go near it because that's sort of like garden stuff. And then I had an area which was like sort of boxes relating to fire, like matchsticks, and that was kind of encroaching on the space of the garden stuff. So I used a barbecue to kind of broach the two things semiotically.
Nice.
And then, after I got the barbecue, I was thinking, well, I got a compass, and I was like, well, maybe I can use the compass to branch out from the barbecue into like a camping themed area.
That was my travel area.
Well, I know, exactly. And then it goes into travel, because then there's sort of things that look a bit like sites that you might see when you're abroad, like one of those sort of Japanese themed gatehouses. I'm not quite sure what they are. So that's down there as well. And then, but what do you do with the bird beak? There's just like an eagle's beak. Does that go in the garden stuff because it's related to a bird, or does it go near the mouths because it's a mouth?
Does it go near my collection of mouths?
If you have a mouths category, I think
there is, but then obviously the mouths category has got to go near the toothpaste. And then maybe you're into like a body thing. So the bones do they go near do they go there? And then what happens with the scroll? Is the scroll ancient civilizations, or is that stationary? Anyway, but it's so you're doing this stuff where you're constantly organizing things, and then you're reorganizing things, and then there's time pressure involved, so that when new deliveries come in, like you've got this kind of big bundle of blocks that are kind of disorganized, and you need to rapidly put them places where you're going to find them, because within a short amount of time, orders are going to start coming in. Then you need to fulfill those orders in a certain amount of time. And I find all that stuff kind of awful, actually, because what I really want from the game is just to build a single perfect line of blocks that moves me from one association perfectly to the next forever. And if I could link both ends, I actually get a little bit sweaty thinking about how perfect that would be.
I found the cycle, the whole circle of existence.
Yeah.
I think that's you're entering some kind of like Elder Sign territory there, I think. Where
Cabal.
This is either how you banish or summon some kind of like Azathoth or like,
Well, Ricky Haggart, who made the game, so it pops out of your computer.
That's how you summon a Dixon's.
Or an Argos.
Or an Argos, yeah.
Imagine
the perfect sort of semiotic Argos catalogue where things just flew based on your assumptions of where they should be. Microwave looks like a television, but it's hot. So it's between televisions and radiators.
Where do I get the eagle's beak? What number for the eagle's beak?
What do you think of people who sort by colour?
I mean, that's the strategy.
Heathens?
No, that makes sense, but I mean, you're going to run into problems there.
When you're asked for a thing, are you shown a picture of that thing?
You get a picture. You get little icons. Yeah, I mean, there's no real.
So you wouldn't forget that. Oh, a beak is blue or whatever.
No, because I mean, it's only a beak by dint of your interpretation of it.
It's actually all wordless.
Yeah, I mean, there are instructions in the game, but it's.
So you don't get names for the items?
No.
Huh.
No, it's all up to you.
So you could be wrong about what it is.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it only means that to me, my own special meaning.
But it's cool though, like the graphics are by Dick Hogg, aren't they? Who's worked with Ricky loads and loads.
Yeah.
But they're all really distinct and maybe I haven't seen all of them yet.
No, they're great. I was just trying to remember which way round their names go. Is it Dick Hogg and Ricky Haggard, or is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Because, that's also a kind of semiotic memorization challenge for me.
Well, it's Richard Hogg as well, so it's RHRH.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. But I mean, the whole time pressure stuff, I don't find that, that seems to me like the antithesis of what I want to get from the game. I completely understand that that is sort of the game, and there's also a Tetris-y element where you have to rotate you can pick up like a certain number of blocks and they'll just kind of pop up in whatever shape they're currently in. And then you might not be able to move them through the stacks of other boxes that you've placed. So, there's a sort of, mechanical problem that you have to
sort of un-Tetris.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's fine. I don't really, but that's not really what I'm excited about. I'm excited about, so there's a point in the game where, after the time pressure stuff happens, you can just sort of relax and take stock. It's while you're taking stock, obviously. Haha.
I'm leaving again.
No, I mean, yeah, that's a valid reaction. But also the game is also sort of like a metaphor in which its own referent is actually its literal self.
How so?
Well, like the idea of it's basically the same process that you go through assembling a mind palace. Except you're not assembling a mind palace because a mind palace necessarily has some kind of external referent. You're trying to organize these imaginary things so that you can better remember something outside. Yeah. But here you're just organizing a virtual space to better remember how you organize that virtual space. And in the same way that, taking stock is, you literally are. I mean, that's what it is. That's why you get that phrase,
Yeah, you're right.
And there's something really satisfying and interesting and sort of another completely closed loop about that game.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah.
Right, like solving it is just solving it. There's no solution.
No, indeed. Yeah, but it says...
And the puzzle is something that you made unwittingly or not in the past.
Exactly, yeah. Every challenge you face are mostly to do with the sort of terms that you've decided
You idiot, Martin! Why did you put the baby's bottles here?
Yeah. They shouldn't go next to the umbrellas. Yeah. And on top of that, there's also there's a weird... basically, I think we can all conclude that Amazon warehouse people just have the best fucking time in the world. They must be just having
I hear that's true,
Yeah. And there's a sort of slightly satirical element to it. Like you get orders from your boss, who is called CJ, which is a really, I don't know.
CJ?
Maybe only Alex or Tom are old enough to remember the rise and fall of Reginald Perrin.
Oh, right. Oh, right. I bet that's a reference. I bet you're right.
This is sort of like an 80s, I think, TV series, in which a man has a really insufferable boss and ends up trying to commit suicide and then reinventing himself.
I'm sure I watched repeats sort of 15, 20, maybe 40 years later.
Yeah. I mean, it
couldn't have been that long ago.
Yeah. And so I think there's periodically you'll be rewarded with a motivational poster, which will say things like, lift with the knees, not with your back. And, that's basically the kind of reward system in the game. And I don't really know what it's saying about work and labour conditions, but maybe there's something there.
When my wife came in and saw me playing it, and I know that she'd love it as well, and I haven't actually sort of made her sit down and play it, but she said, "Is it right that you're meant to have fun with a warehouse game?" But that is definitely there. Like, it is acknowledging it. It's good.
I did work at a warehouse once, and I was trained to lift with my knees, not my back. It's very realistic.
Was that advice your reward for doing some particularly excellent categorization?
No, I think it was up front. I think they had to tell us that before we were allowed to work.
So you had nothing to look forward to through all the work?
Yeah. Just more education like that. Well, I was stacking textbooks, so there's actually a lot of treasures of knowledge within the things I was stacking.
Yeah. How heavy can a beak be, though?
As heavy as any other boxed item, apparently. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no real mass to anything.
You can only pick up about 9 beaks or something like that, isn't it?
Yeah, I think 6 boxes to begin with, but then over time so the better that you fulfill these orders, the quicker you fulfill these orders, the more stars you get. The more stars mean you can unlock certain perks which allow you to do things better. I'm not really into that reward cycle. I feel like now that I know those rewards are there, I'm just like, yeah, fucking give me them. I'd be better at my job. I'd be better at doing the thing that I enjoy, which is organising things based on my own fucking mental system.
Imagine, the thing is, I reckon that if us 3 went into your warehouse, we'd see the rambling kind of organisation of a madman.
Red string connecting the beaks to the barbecues.
I was just expecting a lot of blocks with no particular order to shape, no huge cock.
My mind palace.
Yeah, bird beak at the glands. That's what
it all connects.
The eagle's beak, they call it.
Yeah.
Is there no sandbox mode where it's sort of time unlimited or?
Not as far as I've seen.
Kind of sounds like it is the sandbox mode, right? Like it's.
But if you want with no pressure,
no pressure.
There doesn't seem to be. There's only 2 difficulty settings so far. Maybe you unlock another one, which is just pure sandbox.
I wonder what it'd be like if they just, the sandbox mode was, they keep giving you things to store, but they never ask for them back. So you just you still have the impulse to organize them in some kind of way, but if you don't, then it's fine.
Yeah, I actually don't know what failure. I mean, obviously you get fewer stars, but I mean, I guess the game continues and you can just presumably ignore the time pressure entirely if you don't want to.
So the warehouse doesn't go out of business and various boxes spoil and then rats move in and.
I don't know. I suspect the rat thing is a stretch, but there may be some.
For sure.
Maybe there's some sort of punishment for it. There does seem to be some sort of calendar that you're working through, so maybe I don't know what that overarching thing works towards.
There should be like a random event where someone has snuck into your warehouse and moved something, and you got to figure out which thing they moved.
It'd be interesting if there was a mode, because I was just thinking, obviously, it's not a game that would be particularly accessible to anyone who had issues with vision, but obviously most games aren't. But it'd be interesting to have a version of this. All the boxes looked exactly the same, but every time you touched them, they made a noise.
Yeah.
Like, so they're all just,
Would they make
white
the noise of
cubes
the
or
thing
something.
that you'd most likely assume?
No,
to
it
be,
would
or
have to be
just
really
something-
abstract noise.
Right.
Like maybe even a very, like, vocalization, like, ah! And then you'd have to figure out, like, how to categorize them. That'd be a really interesting secondary kind of
That
challenge.
is a strange noise for a welly. Okay.
Yeah, but it'd be great if it was both as well. So you could categorize by noise, like, well, this is a welly and it shouldn't go with Eagle Speaks, but they're both screams. So,
I like that.
yeah.
In fact, there are some interesting graphical things it does. I don't know if there's an accessibility mode, but as you move further away from things in your warehouse, there's like a cone of vision that you have, and at the kind of periphery of your cone of vision, which is, so within that cone of vision, everything is the full color, and you can see the entire symbols. Then it becomes line art, and then it becomes just the box with no internal kind of image. So, I mean, it's possible if they've already generated the line art for it that there is some kind of non-color mode. But
I'm surprised that they did that, because I remember noticing that in the trailer and thinking it was weird. Like, was it too easy without that? Or
I guess, yeah.
it seems like you'd really want the best overview you could get to kind of keep everything straight in your head.
Yeah, it's forcing you to remember.
That's the challenge.
where
Yeah,
things are,
you need
that's
to remember. Yeah.
It's an interesting idea because it also allows you to delineate between whether you're remembering the shapes or you're remembering the colours. Because they're probably more of a colour memory, so it's like the blues are over here, and then you have to actually know a bit about...
That colour system you mentioned, Alex, would be at a disadvantage because you, as a shorter range at which you can see the colours.
Definitely.
Yeah, I wonder if there's enough, or whether there's too many colour combinations for you to build up a perfect colour wheel.
Yeah, like the blue and yellow, like in equal amounts, or like, do I put it on the green section?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting what you were saying about, because I was going to, because there was a little segue into my game experience.
Go for it. Yeah.
'Cause, like this thing with you just want all of the things to help you do the job better. And I made a terrible mistake. I went back to Guild Wars 2, partly because I'm doing a write-in about it, and partly because I really like Guild Wars 2. I fucking
One of
love
the
it.
highest review scores I've ever given.
Really? Yeah. And it just feels, I mean, I played it when it came out. I probably played it for about 6 months. And then I didn't like the class I had. I had a necromancer class, and I've always liked necromancery classes because you can make pets. I like making pets, but I never understood how the necromancer works in this game. It just never gelled. I just eventually just lost interest.
I was necromancer in Guild Wars 1. I don't think I was in 2. It was added later, was it?
I think
I think
might
it was at
have been.
launch.
Oh, was it?
Maybe.
I'm pretty sure. I mean, I only played it at launch, and that's definitely my character. Unless I'm calling, like I had like
You might be right.
gribbly pets, but they just didn't do anything. Anyway, I dropped it, but what I really loved about it was exploration. I'm kind of a solo player, and I like MMOs, but I like just go and explore. And this game was like, go and explore, and then we're going to reward you for it. And there's just going to be amazing sights all over the place, and I loved it. But I dropped it, and turns out that game came out a fucking long time ago. But I managed to log in. All my details still exist, and the characters. Like, that's awesome. Including a level 2 character that I just started on a whim, clearly. The little Nomi character. And I thought, I'll be that then. And it's a hunter. And basically the hunter is the other pet-owning kind of class I like to have. And so, right, let's do that, I thought. And I started playing. And it's still lovely feel, and like the world is still interesting and weird, and kind of I just really enjoyed it. And just the sense, it's really good at getting a sense of kind of crunch to combat and things like few MMOs really get. And that was really nice. And I was enjoying going up, and I sped up to level 15. And then I had been ignoring kind of like all the little notifications at the top of the screen. And one of them, it said 15 on my messages thing. And so I finally, last night, I opened it up, and it's basically a bunch of messages saying, happy birthday. And I had 6 happy birthday messages because presumably it's been 6 years since I played it, which is terrifying and awful. And like, Christ, how does that happen? So I started opening these birthday messages and all these kind of item gifts started popping out. And I was like, oh, this is good. Like, oh, there's all sorts of things. And most of them are like, transmogrification kind of recipes and that sort of thing, which kind of like, oh, whatever. But some of them are experience and like nice purple, like icon. And it says a gift of experience. And I thought, well, that's good because what I'd really like to do is to get to level 80 pretty fast because I want the mounts because the mounts are fucking cool in that game. And,
you have to be level 80 for the mounts?
Yeah, it's basically end game stuff. It's end game stuff. Jesus. But then if you've been playing it for 6 years, that probably isn't a problem. But, so I thought, okay, fine. And I assumed, I didn't read it. I didn't read the fucking tooltip for these things, but I assumed it was just going to be like a chunk of experience. Like you just see the bar going up halfway to the next one. No. This fucking thing put me to level 50 immediately. Bam! Now I'm level 50. And I read it back again and I had some others. And like, oh, this one will take level to 20. This one will take level 30. This one will take level 60. Luckily I only went for the 50 one.
You took the 50 pill right away.
I took the 50 pill. And initially I thought, And I thought, oh, good. Because that means I can do all the things that it's been kind of like hinting at me. And I was sort of spent like, what was I, level 14. So I had 36 levels of like rewards to go through and like stuff to do on my character and like things to set and points to spend. I thought, this is great. So I did that. And then I was filled with this sense of utter empty desolation where I was suddenly in control of a character whose abilities I had no investment.
I don't even know who I am
understanding
anymore.
of. And I just felt, and then I was still in the, like, and this is like Guild Wars 2. I suppose this is true for any MMO, but it's a game where I can't get around the world still because I've only been in one of the fucking areas. So I can't go anywhere. I've still got to play the game in order to kind of get to places in the game. I suppose you could go to the city, which I can get to. And I think it's got like warp points to other places there. And it does level you down. Like it matches your level to your area. So while your equipment is going to make you very effective at your, in a lower level area, you still have a game there, but like, And actually the XP you get is still actually, it doesn't like now do nothing. It still fills up properly, like at the same rate as before.
You can play anywhere pretty much.
I could still play, but suddenly like the sense of being any reason to play has completely gone, and I don't want to go back. And that's the weirdest fucking feeling. I realized that I wanted a character that I'd actually gone up there myself with. Like, I have got another 40 levels from where I am to get to the top level, but it feels like I'm on a rented character.
It's almost as if it's the journey and not the destination.
Isn't it?
It's kind of amazing that, because I think this is kind of pertinent in the era of WoW Classic being...
Yeah, it really is interesting.
Annihilating every game dev team that I know about, basically, at the moment.
Yeah.
None of us are playing it, right? No. But, like, a colleague was saying today how much he was enjoying planning how he was going to spend the one talent point he would get when he leveled up. And spending a whole evening's play to level up, even in the teens in World of Warcraft. And, I'm going to work towards this. I'm going to put one talent point here, and it's going to give me 1% extra crit chance with axes or something.
But I remember that. I remember that when the first work, like years ago, and thinking, I'm really excited about that crit chance, because every 100 times I hit something, I will get one extra crit.
I remember being utterly depressed by that. It's part of what turned me off World of Warcraft. I'd always get to like around the time that you start to get talents, and then look at the talents and think, oh, for fuck's sake, am I really supposed to be excited about that?
Right. But then since then, actual modern WoW is very much a game of lots of rewards all the time, lots of different parallel progression paths and lots to do. And, you're not going to do 30-second loops, and you'll never be bored, and you'll always be seeing something new. And there is something to be said, I think, for how much people enjoy the opposite of that. How much people would like to just work towards a single goal. Or it doesn't scale. You don't feel 10 times the satisfaction when you get 10 times more decisions to make when you level up. And you don't feel 10 times more ownership if you're making 10 times more decisions. It's just sort of, yeah, it is annoyingly kind of just about working for something pointless and feeling like you earned it. And if you don't feel like you earned it, then what was the point?
Yeah, it's really odd. It's really, really odd. Because I thought actually that I would just go, okay, well, I'll just keep exploring then. But actually, I do need to feel that on the way to the thing that I'm going to explore to. And actually the game, I also realized that those exploration points, the kind of way you go towards the little squarey things that are kind of points of interest and the little mappy things which you have to climb up to and so on, waypoints and things. You get rewarded with XP. And actually, while I was thinking, it's getting the exploration and seeing the site, it was the little dose of XP. But now that I've had sort of 36 levels of XP just sort of shat into my mouth, I'm just sort of thinking, I don't want any more. I just don't want any more XP.
Well, not if you put it like that.
Baby birded by God. Oh, yeah, well, you did it yourself, though. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Does that make it a lot worse? Like, if they had automatically leveled you up, how would you have felt? Like, if you'd logged back in, it's like, you've been gone a long time, so we've leveled you up so you can play the new stuff.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it?
Is it because you somehow, maybe this is turning into more of counselling, but is it because
I do blame myself for a lot of things.
Yeah, it's because you didn't read the tooltip.
Do you think, sorry.
No, go on.
Do you think if there was no XP reward for exploration that you would now be enjoying it more than you are?
No, because I think the XP dose was actually what was powering my
because
interest in
there's a
exploring
theory
in the
that
first place.
If there's an activity that someone would normally be getting an intrinsic reward for and you give them an extrinsic reward for it, as soon as you take away the extrinsic reward, they both don't get that and they don't get the intrinsic one either.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
It's why you should almost never get paid for something you love.
And then stop getting paid.
Well, more seriously, why you shouldn't go back to try and do something as a hobby after you've been paid to do it, because...
Yeah.
Are the quests that you're doing the same quests that you were playing 6 years ago, or have they been revamped?
I'm in a different area, so
right.
I don't think they've updated it.
Because also Guild Wars is a game more of like, well, actually, so it does have quests early on, and then eventually it kind of gives way to like these sort of event loops.
Right.
So a zone has like a series of events, and sometimes they're conditional on each other, where players either solo or collectively do a world thing, and then that leads to the next world thing. So like, I don't know, a beachhead invasion that will get to a certain point and then organically reset.
Yeah, I vaguely remember this.
It's really elegant. And you have story, like the only quests are like these story things, which are like voiced semi-cutscene kind of things. And you get them when you get to level like 3 or something, but then the next bit of story doesn't pop in until, I don't know, level 15 or something. I can't remember. But it's like, so I got all this dose of story. But of course the story missions are basically go to this instance, like it's not very good. You don't
you
don't listen to any of the cutscenes, so you don't know why anything's happening. And apparently, I'm having a fight with a robot. And
is that just because you feel under time pressure to reach the story content which is appropriate for your level? You just don't.
Oh, no, but this is how it was when. It's just a fucking MMO story, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Like the good thing about it is, and then the rest of it is, you're just out in the world exploring, and then you're going to places and doing little, you're told there's a little heart symbol that pops up, and then, you have to do it, like revive a certain number of your compatriots and kill such and such and collect these, and that will fill your little heart thing. And then you've done it. That's something you find rather than a given in the world. It's elegant, and you don't have to do that. You can just scooch around and
There's no point in doing anything anymore though, Alex.
It's gone.
What did you name your pet?
I was called Bermondsey.
Okay, yeah.
I didn't name my pet. It was a tiger. I don't even know if I could.
Is that because you don't care about him anymore? There's nothing to you now.
No, actually, I'll tell you why. It was because it came with the character. I don't know I may have selected it 6 years ago, but it came with the character. So, I don't know. I don't have any connection to it. I did get a spider last night, but that was after I got to level 50 and felt this sort of sense of utter fucking
Fuck this!
emptiness. So I just
I don't even like spiders.
A spider called Ennui. What I want to know is, what are you holding in your left and right hands?
twin axes.
Oh, cool. Does the offhand axe do something different to the on-hand axe?
Yes, but they are like abilities, and one of them was shooting something, which I thought it's not very axe-like, but I'll go with it.
Not throwing.
Oh, I could do a big whirly, I could do this sort of like whirling motion thing, just hitting everything around.
That's what hunters are all about. Can you know anything?
I'm not very
You
hunty.
don't even know the principles.
I thought that
of
as a
hunting
hunter
wildlife.
I'd be all over the bow, but so I was stuck to the bow to start with, and then I thought, no, I'm going to go broadsword, I'm going to smack them up.
I recently learned that video games have been holding out on us on the axe throwing front. Because I went axe throwing, and
I went axe throwing.
it's cool, but like for amateurs, you obviously need to be at a very fixed range and practice that particular range for a long time. So if an enemy's coming at you, you're going to have to time it pretty precisely.
So do you
But
have to
then
kind of
halfway
go, do you get a feel for when the blade's going to hit?
It's like 8 to 12 feet, I think, there's the distance you can choose between in that range, and then it's calculated so it'll be roughly one spin. And, you know, if you're getting it wrong, then you move back a bit or forwards a bit. You don't really change, like, well, you could change how you release it, but I didn't. I thought, like, let's just keep doing the same thing with my arms and move backwards and forwards depending on how that should work. But then halfway through the session, they just bring out a second axe. And it's like, now throw two at once. Like, what? You can throw two axes at once? That's just the thing you can do. Just throw two axes at once. I haven't done that in a video game. I've done it in real life now.
That's the one time. The one time. Unfortunately, your target does have to be... Does that mean that all the kind of, I don't know, Norse berserkers and stuff, like, they can only do one range?
After experimenting with this, my feeling was that for melee, I would like two axes, but for range, I'll stick with one, because it's fucking difficult to get two of them to, like,
That's actually kind of a rad idea. If you put it in a game, you could have, it's a limited range because it's a throwing weapon, but also like at 8 to 12 feet, it does slashing damage. And at like 0 to 8 feet, it does crushing damage.
one bonk damage.
Bonk damage. Yeah,
Also-
although even better, like a Deus Ex game where it's a lethal weapon at 8 to 12 feet and a non-lethal takedown at like 1 to 8 feet.
And then after
And so
that
if
point...
the guard slightly wanders away, like, oh no, shit, then it like blade first.
And actually, like 2 to 6 feet, it should be like one non-lethal damage, and then at like 7 feet, just before the blade hits, it would be a larger amount of non-lethal damage as the back of the axe hits them.
Yeah. They didn't axe for this.
Oh,
That was way worse than Martin's one.
I liked your noise like a disappointed bomb. Sorry. Guild Wars?
What you did play? Did you play anything amongst all the axe throwing?
Yep, there's a new Slay the Spire class. Dun dun dun.
End of Tom's life.
It's only in beta, but yeah, they've long said they would do this after release, like there'd be another class and it would be free, and it is. It's only in beta at the moment, and I mentioned it on the pod before, and I think I said that I was sort of like, wow, not envying their task, trying to come up with something different to all the amazing ideas the community have come up with, but still, you know, valid and viable. Well, what they've actually done is come up with a class that is more or less an amalgam of 3 community classes that already exist. It's so similar to the community classes that, like, if you tried to make a sort of just a pastiche of community classes, this would be a remake, basically. But that's not to say that they actually, like, you know, I don't have any theories as to which way the inspiration went there. But it's a class based on stances. Which is a thing I played in 2 different fan-made classes. So Slay the Spire supports modding, and the mods are on Steam Workshop, and most of the really good mods that I played are all just someone's made a new class. And this, the official new one is called the Watcher, and they are a sort of monk-type class who 2 of your starting cards put you in different stances. You start in no stance, but when you play one of them, you go into Wrath stance, which means you deal double damage and you also take double damage. And then you can also go into Calm stance, which means that nothing actually is different while you're in Calm stance, but when you leave it, you get 2 energy back. And the card that puts you in Calm stance costs 2 energy. So it's really just like sort of deferring that. And the interesting thing about it, I think it's a better take on stances than either of the two community characters that I played that use this idea. In that it doesn't have a defensive class as far as I've seen. You do, like, as you get rarer cards and unlock new sets of cards, there are some other stances you can get into that are rarer to achieve. But as far as I've seen, there's no class that just boosts your defense or, increases your dexterity or, anything like that. And I think that's a good idea because one of the community characters I played with the stance thing, the defensive stance was kind of just too good, and you could keep buffing it and making it so that when people attacked you, they took damage, and all your basically Slay the Spire is never that good if you can just always block all the damage that's incoming, because then you can always get through a fight. And so this one is all about timing and just figuring out like which turn to strike on. Because obviously once you activate this Wrath stance, you are going to do loads of damage, but if you're still in Wrath stance at the end of the turn, you're going to take double damage, and in Slay the Spire, that's usually not viable. Like, the enemies that are going to be an actual problem to you are already doing enough damage that it's very, very difficult to be able to block it all, and if you double that, it's almost game over. Also, this character has less maximum health than any of the others, and so they're very fragile, and if you fuck up, if you just have one bad turn, you end up in Wrath with no way of getting out of the Wrath stance, then you're probably just going to die then and there. It very much feels like an advanced character, like one that's designed for people who are kind of already mastered the other three and want something extra to think about. It's one where you can absolutely fuck up the order in which you play cards. If you just play this one too soon and then you realize, oh no, shit, I should have been in this stance before I played that, and then I could have got out of it, and then I would have got my energy back, and then this thing would have happened, and that thing would have happened. And then the other mechanic that it goes big on is Retain, which is also the centerpiece of a community character that I played. I think one of the stance characters I played made by the community was the Construct, I think. And then the one that's based on Retain, I believe, is called the Disciple. Basically that community character is all about just cards that would stay in your hand. Basically, Retain means at the end of your turn, it stays in your hand. And usually you discard all your cards that you haven't already played, and you get a new hand. Retain one, stay in your hand, and then you get 5 more in addition to those. So you get it with just more cards. And the community character, the Disciple, had a lot of ways of reducing the cost of those. Like, the longer you hold it between turns, the cheaper it gets, or the more powerful it gets. And the Watcher absolutely has that as well. And in fact, a lot of the cards that change your stance have Retain on them as well. So basically, once that comes up in your hand, you're going to hang on to it until you play it. And so you kind of hold and reserve the ability to turn into that stance, which is useful. And so what you're kind of trying to do, if there are attack cards that have Retain on them, then there's one I think it's called Sands of Time, and it does quite a large amount of damage, but it costs 4 energy to play. Usually you only have 3 energy per turn, but it also has a Retain on it, and each turn you retain it, it goes down in cost by 1. And so it's about, you don't really want to play it in your first turn anyway, because you're probably not in Wrath stance, or you don't want to be in Wrath stance, because once you're in Wrath stance, it's going to cost you something to get out of it, and you're going to be taking a crazy amount of damage all the time you're in it. So, like, I feel like the sort of typical default way to play it is you either go into calm stance or no stance at all, and just sort of play it safe and defend until you've retained enough cards that you have, like, a card that's going to turn you into Wrath stance, and then several cards that are going to deal a decent amount of damage that also have Retain on them, so you can store them up. And then that one turn that you activate Wrath, then you get to play all your damage cards at double damage, and that should be enough to close off the fight. And then you don't have to worry about how much damage you're going to take, because it's over. And of course, you can't do that all the time. And particularly on bosses, you're going to have to pick a threshold. Like, you can't really wait until you can just one-shot a boss, because you're never going to have that many damage cards in one hand unless you have a really good deck. And so it's about, like, it's a really nice mechanic of trying to pick that moment of, like, okay, I think if I go into Wrath now, I can either finish it before I take too much damage, or I have a way of getting back out of it, and then that works too. So the Calm stance is not a defensive one. It's, like I say, when you leave Calm, you get 2 energy. And so that combos really well with Wrath, because if you go into Calm, you're not getting any benefit yet, but you're storing up all these cards, you're storing up a card that can put you into Wrath stance, and then when you go into Wrath stance, you get the 2 energy back, so now you have energy to spend like everything in your hand basically, and get double damage from them. But then there's the other kind of builds you can go for. There's a whole load of cards that give you something that kind of happens when you change stance. So there's one that gives you block when you change stance. There's one that gives you extra cards when you change stance. And there's cards that their cost is reduced every time you change stance. And so if you can figure out a way to have like, enough cards that you can go into Wrath, play a few attack cards, then go back out of it into Calm, and then go back into Wrath, you're getting energy back, you're getting card draw, and you're getting block. I tried to build like that this afternoon, and I died. Because there aren't that many cards that switch stance that will stay around in your deck. Most of them exhaust. So like this one put you in Calm cheaply, but after you've used it, it's gone from your deck. So for a boss fight, you're going to blow through those pretty quickly and then not have any more to switch stances with. And if that's what your whole build was depending on, then you're kind of screwed. Other ones will do stuff like this one called Tantrum, which puts you in Wrath stance and you can't leave it again for the rest of the turn. Like nothing can calm you down, which is really good. And then there's some of the cards you unlock give you something called Mantra, which does nothing by itself, but when you have 10 of it, it puts you in the Divinity stance. And in the Divinity stance, you do 3 times damage, and you don't take any extra damage at all, but it only lasts for that one turn. Oh, or you also get like 4 bonus energy. It's completely insane. And if by the time you get into that, you've also got some, like a power in effect that gives you cards when you change stance, you tick over into getting like extra mantra, and you get up 10 mantra, and then that activates Divinity. That counts as a stance change, so that triggers all your block and your extra cards and all those other benefits from that and other things reducing cost. And then you can also do triple damage with them, and you have all this extra energy, and you can often finish the fight there. There's one card that puts you in that Divinity stance immediately. Don't have to build up any mantra, it just does it straight away, but you die next turn. So it's all or nothing. You just play that and you either win or you die.
So it sounds like, because it feels like with Slay the Spire is just mechanics of the game, basically,
yeah.
Right? And expanding Slay the Spire is add to this meaningfully. Is it a case of making it, I guess there's 2 questions. Is it a case of just making it more complicated to achieve things that other classes can achieve quicker? And is that fun? Like the first thing sounds like it has a qualification attached to it, but there really isn't. It's just like, is it fun to build a weirder Rube Goldberg machine to achieve a big damage combo? Because like,
yeah,
the other classes can do that, and probably without quite as much gymnastics.
It is fun because you feel like you're sort of always riding on a knife edge. It's the turns where you get to spend all this stuff and do triple damage. Like that's the thing that's never been in the game before. And there are so many ways to kind of maximize that and to kind of hold on to all your advantages and stock them up and time it all to be on like turn 4 is going to be an incredible turn for me. The other classes don't have that kind of intentionality. You kind of, if you have a great deck as the Ironclad that can double your strength every time you get that card, that's great. And some of your turns will be great and it will get better and better as it goes on, but there's no kind of like intentional pace to it. It's just, oh, if I got good stuff, the good stuff might come up at the right time, and that's great.
Yeah, you got this kind of padding that will get you through a bad hand and things.
Yeah. With this class, it's like, it's random when the thing first comes up in your deck, obviously, but once it's come up, if it's got Retain on it, you get to choose when to play it. And there are other cards that there are a lot of cards that set things up in advance, like you play it now, and it's going to put another card in your draw pile, and so you know in future you're going to get this card, and when that comes up, you get to hang on to it, and you can just time it to get this really good return. And those one-turn kills are awesome, and it feels earned because it's so difficult to get there and so risky to set it up. And also, it really feels, it's just very technical, and you feel clever when you win with it because you're always on this like on the brink of death basically, and you found some way with this hand of 5 cards, like none of them do any damage, and you've got to kill the enemy this turn. But this one, if you play it after you played a skill, it draws a card. And then the card it draws turns out to be this unplayable card that draws 2 miracles. And the miracles let you get more energy, and that lets you play this other card that draws 3 more cards, and then those cards turn out to be damage-dealing ones. And this one, even though it would do more damage in Wrath, you're going to cast it while you're still in Calm, because it goes to it's an exhaust card, so it gets exhausted, and then if you ever change stance, it comes back from your exhaust pile. And so you're going to cast it in Calm, then go into Wrath, and then it will come back to you and you get to cast it again. But if you cast Wreath of Fame before that, that adds 5 damage to your next attack. But this is an attack that does 3 damage 5 times. And so it's going to end up doing 8 damage 5 times. But because you're in Wrath, it's going to be 16 damage 5 times. And then when it all works out and you realize, oh, they're going to die this turn. You're like, oh, thank God.
How does the potential to take double damage feel in a game where damage is persistent? So obviously you can win, but then maybe take one hit or something that knocks you right down, and that's going to affect like campaign level progress, right? In kind of a nasty way.
I feel like I'm just kind of used, like when you're in Wrath at the end of your turn, that's a choice you've made.
Right.
That's a bold decision on your part. Cause you never have to enter Wrath. It's always, you only do it if you either have a way out or they're not doing that much damage this turn or they're not attacking this turn. And it's actually been really rare for me to find myself just sort of stuck in that stance and unable to get out of it. There are also just loads of cards where like, this one just gives you 7 block and takes you out of your stance. So if you want to have a deck where you can easily get out of any stance you're in, you'll have ways of doing that. So I think only like a couple of times I've actually found myself stuck in that, unless you get Tantrum, of course, in which case. But again, that's a choice you've made. I took the card where you enter Wrath and you can't get back out again.
Is this out now?
It's in beta. So, it's very like, there's no art for almost any of these cards. So they'll just have a massive word beta scrawled on them in handwriting. And it's changing quite a lot. Like I noticed just today, there's been a bunch of changes to how some of the cards work. There was one that, in Slay the Spire, there's these cards that cost X energy. And then if it's costs X energy and it does 8 times X block, then you get, if you spend 4 energy, you get 4 times 8 block. There's one here that, until recently, it gave you X energy for the next X turns.
Oh, wow.
So if you spent 1 energy on it, it gives you 1 more energy next turn, which is kind of useless. But if you spend 4 energy on it, you get 4 energy every turn for 4 turns. That has already changed. It now does 2 energy for
no
next
way.
turns. So I'm guessing I never even got that card to work, but I'm guessing somebody did. There's also there's a relic in Slay the Spire that you can buy in shops sometimes that makes all X cards do X plus 2 for free. And so even if you spend no energy on it, you get 2 free energy for 2 turns.
How long will the game be? Like, are they
When game die?
Yes.
I have a sense they might move on after this. I don't think there's going to be an endless stream of these classes. I don't know, but I listened to an interview with Anthony Giavetti on the Splunky show, and it's not that he said anything to that effect. It's just I sort of got the sense that this was like that they might be a bit tired because they did an insane schedule with the game itself. They did a year of early access, doing updates every week, and then before it even went to early access, I think it had been developed 2.5 years or something of really intense development. They totally crunched. They were working 18 hours a day and stuff. And I assume and hope that they've taken it a bit easier since launch because this is the first really big update since launch. It launched quite a while ago. And I imagine they probably want to move on to new stuff.
It seems like the kind of game where you could just give it to the community.
Yeah.
Which they kind of have.
They kind of have in a way, but it's all they probably need is check in on every now and then, promote some of the best mods into the game with credit or whatever is appropriate, and then that will happen, right?
Yeah.
At some point, they've maybe obviously taken on this challenge of designing a class that maybe improves on what the community's tried to do in different ways. But raw kind of, small team design power probably can only take them so far, honestly, before just
I'd love to see
people will figure it out.
Yeah, and I'd love to see, given that they're already taking in kind of leading ideas from or at least, it's reflecting leading ideas in the community, can it support any major new ways to play, major new concepts for a build, for a character?
Yeah, I think, I do really like this new class. But like I say, before it came out, I was expecting them to try and do something the community couldn't do. if you want
Well,
to come up with something the community hasn't.
the logic doesn't exist for in the...
Yeah, so like the first image they released to this class, they always do really teasing images where it just shows some tiny little thing. And it was just like a red and blue, almost like a yin-yang kind of swirl thing. And I wondered for a moment whether this class would have like two different kinds of energy. Like if they, because it was pretty clear it was going to be a monk and something about balance. And I was wondering if it would have like sort of, peaceful energy and fury energy or whatever, and then spend those in different ways. That's something the community can't really do, I don't think, with the framework they've got. The kind of, there's a community character where you're a slime and you have pet slimes, but they work kind of like the orbs for the defect. And there are ones that do this stance thing. That was already possible with the framework they had. So it would be interesting to see, like, what can they do that the community can't.
Like I'm thinking about the first person. Maybe with some sort of gun.
Shoot the Spire. Blast.
Yeah.
It really bothers me. This is a tiny thing, but it's set in a world that doesn't appear to have any kind of guns. It feels like a medieval fantasy kind of thing. But then some of their cards, there's one called Double Tap that, the icon for it is just like a corpse with these 2 bullet holes in it, but it's the worst art in the whole fucking game. Even like a year before release, it was like, oh my god, this is the worst placeholder art you have. You've got to change this one right away. And they changed like 25 others, but not this one. It's still in the game and it really bothers me. There's also a card called Bullet Time, which is kind of a weird...
So they've been teasing it for years then. They need to add gun.
That's the new class, is just a gun. There's no person attached to it. Just lies on the floor.
This is like,
man, that's an amazing idea for a pet class. It's a gun on the floor and you have to summon creatures that might be able to use the gun. and know what to do with it.
Or maybe your deck is
and
just...
your ultimate card is Human Man. And like,
20 bullets.
It's a real monster.
3 reload cards. It's just bullet, reload.
I think you need to get modding, Alex.
Chris.
Hi.
What have you done?
Oh,
what have you done?
Oh, I've done it again. I've enjoyed a game by Remedy. I've been playing Control. And so Control is, as I say, Remedy's new game. It is, I think, set in the same universe as Alan Wake. Weirdly.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It was certainly, makes sort of cutesy endeavours on the side to close off Alan Wake in some interesting ways. And this has been sort of teased for a while, and I have to admit, I was left quite cold by almost all of the promo stuff they showed. And I think it is a game that, I think maybe it doesn't demo particularly well, because of some of its flaws, which I'll get to, but I'm actually really, really enjoying it. So it's a third person action game shooter, single player shooter, set in a, sort of paradimensional government building, called the Oldest House, which is basically, the notion is there is a government agency called the Federal Bureau of Control, which is functionally the X-Files meets SCP Containment Breach meets that kind of thing. But the broad kind of thesis of it, which is fun, is that, reality is a very thin construct, that everything is information at the end of the day and other dimensions bleed in, essentially through intention all of the time. And, human intention in lots of different ways just shapes the world. And what we see as real and physical is actually far less stable than that. And so there's this US government bureau called the Federal Bureau of Control, who attempt to just keep reality in one kind of frequency, basically one set of operational principles. And their headquarters at this big building, which no one knows is there, basically. And it's,
who cleans all the floors then?
A janitor, a Finnish janitor.
They're very well looked
called,
after.
Artie.
Artie.
Did you actually know this? Because the janitor is one of the big
I thought you were joking.
Nope.
This is very real.
The paradimensional Finnish janitor is...
I did see a video with a Finnish
real.
janitor who was doing very, very nonsensical talking.
For like 17 minutes straight.
Yeah.
Extremely slow delivery.
Yeah, no, I think so.
Yeah, it's real weird. Like, so in order to the top level thing is obviously Remedy, the people who made Alan Wake and
Max
Payne. And it has, very much all their sort of fingerprints all over it. Like I was far bigger fan of Max Payne, particularly the first two, than Alan Wake. But you know, all the weird parts of Max Payne, like the weird television they would put in the background and the little references to the Twilight Zone, the Easter eggs and that kind of thing. It's that, basically. It's their opportunity to run with some of those really weird ideas in a different direction. I want to give like an overview of what it is and then talk about some of the weird decisions they've made. But basically, so you enter this house as a young woman who's sort of found her own reason to be there and maybe possessed by a kind of time ghost. Don't know. This place shifts, like, and it's an interesting, it's set fundamentally in like big offices. Like it's big spaces that feel more realistic than a lot of game spaces because they're large and they're very, very detailed and everything is physics object pretty much. So it's just full of stuff that falls over during gunfights and it's very, very detailed, but everything is too big and doesn't quite fit into the building around it. And it's full of corners and sort of sightlines that don't make sense and ceilings that are too high. And you're told over and over again that the building shifts from time to time. So it's also full of these like fallout shelters that the idea is if the building is shifting, people run into these and just figure out what department they come out in when everything changes around them.
Oh no, we're in marketing.
Yeah, right. Well, that is actually what happens if you run out of journalism into the safe room, the door opens again and you're in marketing. It's great. And then there's tons of ideas. Like, I don't want to bang on too much about the fiction necessarily so much as the delivery of it, but, you know, one of its ideas, for example, is you start amassing essentially psychic powers or reality warping powers of your own. And you get these from, items called objects of power or oops. And an oops is formed when almost like too much, like, symbolic weight is placed upon a physical object. Like, it's almost like the Wilmot's warehouse thing of sort of like the semiotics of it. Like, broken like, I am a huge fucking sucker for this stuff where it kind of overlaps with cosmic horror and those kinds of things. Like, it's, so the example, the first one you get is the ability to pick up and throw objects, with your mind. And you get this from a floppy disk that you find. And the floppy disk, was a repository for Cold War era launch codes. Nuclear launch codes. And it sort of changed hands between American and Soviet spies a few times and was eventually sort of claimed from an embassy by somebody. But by that time, it had gotten so infused with human anxiety about the concept of launching things that now it basically
launches everything.
It launches stuff. It's just what it does and it falls apart. And so you kind of take you don't take it and then wave it around. Like, it vanishes and you kind of
More's the pity.
You take on everything that it represented. Right? The way it impacted reality. And now you can do that, which is by throwing things.
In a sense, by throwing this barrel at you.
Right.
I represent anxiety about nuclear war.
And so it has, and so one layer of it is like, these things are, you know, you're told have been claimed by the Bureau at different events. So the Bureau are like the G-men who show up at the end of a Stephen King story about like a haunted typewriter or something. And that's kind of the idea is that everything is haunted, but being haunted is not ghosts. It's something getting saturated with meaning to the point where it starts behaving in a weird way or acting as a kind of conduit for extra dimensional forms of sentience.
Including your gun, which represents your guns.
Yeah, so your gun. So basically, this is the intro of the story, and it's not a spoiler because it's an opening cutscene. But basically, the Bureau has a director, and the director is the person who speaks to the board, and the board is a pyramid that exists out of time, and just sort of honks at you in sort of pure meaning, but in these sort of text strings that have lots of slashes in them. So it'll say words and juxtapose.
You can tell it's weird then.
Well, it's kind of nicely done because it juxtaposes two concepts at the same time. So it's this slash this is this slash this, and occasionally it breaks the fourth wall. So it will, you know, because it knows it's a game. The board knows it's a game. But anyway, the board, the director's kind of badge of office is a gun that is basically just intent. And in the very beginning of the game, the previous director shoots himself with the gun. And then you pick up the gun, and the gun chooses you to be the new director, even though you're a complete newcomer. And everyone has to go with this because you've been picked by sort of, and it's kind of nice. It kind of knights you as the protagonist of the game, but very much within the context. And this is shit they've been doing since Max Payne. Like, it's very much in that playing with the medium a little bit. But the previous director's, thoughts were about being the director and what that means were recorded on the bullet that killed him as it passed through his brain. So, occasionally the gun speaks to you through, a different device called the hotline, which is like a big red phone that allows you to talk to the space triangle, basically, but also to the director. And so it uses real FMV. It uses actors. And so sometimes you'll go in, there'll be a projector on a wall, and you'll see a video from like the head of research or something, and it'll be the actor, doing a real, which they did for Max Payne as well. They do weird puppet shows, and there's all sorts of weird shit in it, like. The weirdest choice they've made is when you're getting one of these lectures from the former director about something, it's looping footage of him just smoking a cigarette in the dark while sort of standing in front of a big blue light. And it just looks like the cheapest thing in the world, maybe on purpose. But it's such a strange, it's so weird because
there's a really neat thing they do with, early on, I think I haven't got to the telephone yet, but I'm coming up on that. And then the director is kind of talking to you at various points in your head, and you are seeing them kind of projected into the 3D space around you, but in a way that's kind of uncanny. I can't entirely figure out because at first it looks like it's just a projector behind you casting it onto the level around you. But as you move through it, it seems to be 3D as well.
Yeah, because that is footage of a real actor being projected as if from an invisible projector past you and interacting with real physics objects. It's weird. Eventually you get the ability to see those videos raw. And it is just looping footage of him, like, smoking, looking around a room. And it is the cigarette smoking man from the X-Files, pretty much. But, like, crossed with, like a local theatre production of Double Indemnity.
It fits really because this is his construct, and, like, he's just a bloke.
There's all sorts of sort of weird stuff in there. And, like, there's it benefits a lot from like initially just a level of detail. Like I went to an area which had a whiteboard on it, and the whiteboard appeared to be covered in text, and then I zoomed in, and textures are high res enough now that it was just lines and lines of text. It was a story. It was maybe a 800 word kind of mad kind of short SCP style story just on a whiteboard in a random corner of the room. And so far I've enjoyed it. It's schlocky sometimes. It's not camp, but it's very much like an episode of The Twilight Zone. Like, it even implies that the Bureau produces TV shows like The Twilight Zone to control the kinds of paranormal ideas that exist, because if those ideas are in the human consciousness, then they impact reality, so they need to be kept within certain boundaries. So, like, genre is a construction of the Bureau because it allows for reality to be maintained along certain kind of, like,
the Marvel is
semiotic patterns. It's kind of neat. Like, there's a bunch of, like, I'm a big sucker for this stuff, generally.
It's really interesting that it seems so, obviously it has so many influences that you can point to, and like so many of them are TV. Like, it's so much more common in games to rip off films, right? Like Alien and Terminator and stuff. And this, obviously it references David Lynch, and it keeps making me think of Warehouse 13. I don't know if there's a direct inspiration for them, but that's literally a TV show about getting these objects of power and bringing them all to this one safe place to kind of contain them. And then Fringe, of course, like I was just talking about a bullet going through someone's head and keeping all the memories on it. Like, that's such Fringe shit. Yeah. And then when you go into a new area, there's this massive font thing that Fringe also did, where just like the name of the area just appears on screen in vast text.
Yeah. And so there's all that from that point of view. And then it took me a while to figure out what it was doing from a game point of view. Because one thing that's interesting about it is it feels very much like a setup for a horror game, but it isn't. It's an action game. Like, it is full on a shooter. And so the enemy is basically, there are other factions, but the setup is that essentially, like, just a bad resonance has gotten into the Bureau, which is a kind of this thing called the Hiss, which is, it's functionally, it's turning the staff against you. They're not zombies. They are just evil humans for the most part, but with increasingly paranormal powers as things get layered on. But basically, essentially, it could be, it's spooky possessed people by any other means, except they're possessed by bad sound, which does allow them to do some really cool visual effects with, like, when you kill them and you see, like, a sort of sonic wave kind of emit from them and things like this. And some of them are enemies, like when the guards get corrupted, they turn into enemies that will spawn in a level and come and get you. Sometimes you get chased by basically like sentient balls of sound that heal the other ones and so on. But then also, sort of non-combat personnel who get possessed hover in the air, just chanting like lines of dialogue, over and over and over again. So it creates these really weird soundscapes as you're moving around. But this is the real weird thing, because its other big influence, it took me a while to get to this, I'm pretty sure is Destiny. That is a weird one, because basically, so you start off you have one gun, and you can sort of craft new astral forms for it, which are shotgun, charge shot, that kind of thing, and then equip two of them and switch between two of them. You can also you can basically gather up concepts as you walk through the world. Like, there's one of them's called something like a ritual impulse. So it's like, the idea is that even things like always putting your keys in the same place when you leave the house, this is an intentional act that affects reality in some way. So you collect the sort of, the astral imprint of a ritual impulse like that, and then you use these to make a shotgun. Which is very Destiny, actually, like having really high sci-fi stuff, but also gun. But the other reason I mention it is because, so you start to amass these powers, and eventually you get to the point where the combat system becomes really fucking good. And it takes a little while to get there, I think. But there's a few ways in which that is demonstrated. So one is the composition of enemy groups. Eventually, it tends to introduce each new enemy type quite slowly, but eventually you get these big groups that have relationships with how they approach combat. So you can have goons and snipers and characters with RPGs and grenade launchers. Some have shields, and shields take far more damage from like a telekinetic impact than they do from bullets. And then you have like these orbs of sound that heal other enemies. You have other enemies that go invisible until they are behind you, and these sorts, all these different things. And this is something that Bungie games generally do really well, is have enemies with behaviors that you fight them one-on-one, you get it, and then the actual interest comes from having a big arena and lots of them in different configurations and having to kind of figure it out. And you get powers at a clip as well, and it's not like a rotating, set of things. It's almost like a new key binding every time you get it. So eventually you get lift, and that allows you to lift and hold an object. And it's like the best feeling gravity gun I've played for a while, because it lightly auto targets in a way that's really satisfying. And like I say, these environments are full of physics objects. So you're picking up everything from like desk chairs to ripping monitors and the still sparking kind of cables out of their sockets. And it's an ability you always have. So even if you're not around a physics object, it will pull a chunk of the wall out and give you a block of concrete instead. But if you do pick up like a gas canister or something like that, or a fire extinguisher, it will explode with a different effect. So there's a real feeling of, it's cool. It's a cool feeling of connection.
Did you play Psyops years ago?
No.
Yeah, really did. Like the videos I've seen, really, this is presumably it was on PS2 as well, but it was PS2 I played it on, yeah. And it's basically, you work for government side things, and you just shoot stuff with your brains, and it's really good fun.
And then you get you get a shield, which allows you to surround yourself with a swirling cloud of debris, and then ultimately can be upgraded, that you then can kind of project that as a burst attack when you let go of it. And then you get the ability to boost in the air, and then ultimately fly. And then the ability to, if an enemy is on low health, you absorb the power of an X-ray monitor unit, a haunted X-ray monitor unit, which allows you to get inside people's minds and turn enemies to fight for you, but they have to be on low health, so that has an interaction if they're being healed, and all this other stuff. And then you can upgrade your abilities so that you can now grab rockets out the air with telekinesis, so it'll automatically grab them rather than a nearby object if there's a rocket or a grenade nearby. And it starts to all pile up, and none of this stuff is like massively groundbreaking, but it's all executed really nicely, and it's sort of it's quite entertaining. And then it starts to throw things at you don't expect. So you get you unlock control points basically throughout the building, and it's a big, almost open world, even though it's an office block, and then you're being sent on a particular place for the critical path. But then every now and then a mission will pop up and say that there's an emergency in this department, and you have 20 minutes to get there. And if you want, you can just go there and do that instead for bonus points. And they're almost like generated combat encounters, like these, uncorrupted bureau agents are fighting the enemies here, and so you go there and do that. And it's almost like a public event in an MMO, but in a single player game. It's a really weird decision, but it creates this sense that you're never quite settled on your little path going and doing what you're doing. You then run back to a control point and then fast travel to somewhere else and then go and do that for a bit and hoover up some loot and go off in a different direction. It's kind of interesting. I haven't finished it, and so I don't know how it all ends or how satisfying that is, but I wouldn't say that necessarily like crests head above the sort of 8 out of 10 region in a bunch of ways, because at the same time it is not, I don't know. It's one of those games that I think it's definitely more than some of its parts. I think that's maybe the weakness of why it didn't make a great showing in promotional stages. That you see a bit of it, you're like, not sure. But then in aggregate, somehow it achieves more than that.
Yeah, I've only played a little bit of it, but I'm liking it a lot more than I thought I would from what I saw. And the stuff they show, like, especially when they show like the astral plane stuff, it's just that you go to like a tutorial dimension to learn new things.
Yeah, the big triangle takes you to the tutorial dimension. Yeah.
Yeah, that's just like such a big sigh from me. Oh, fucking hell, video games.
Is it white background by any chance? Yeah.
And like the geometric shapes hanging in space kind of thing.
Oh, we've got to stop doing that. We've got to stop doing that.
And you do go there, but that's such a small part of it. You just go there to learn one new thing, and then you come back, and then like the gravity gun thing, you go to a tutorial dimension to learn that, and it kind of sucks in the tutorial dimension. I mean, it's fine, but it's not that cool. And then you go back to the real world, and now you're ripping shit off walls, and it's really spectacular and cool.
Yeah, because Max Payne was the originator of the terrible dream level, right? With the blood trails and the baby crying. Oh, that's awful.
Yeah, it is schlocky in the same way that Max Payne was schlocky. Like that sort of just very, very earnest. Like it does, the main character, you hear her thoughts, and the only thing it's doing there that is sort of different, like to sort of explain it somewhat, is it sort of rapidly introduces that there is another presence with her, and that's probably who you are actually.
Right.
And that explains why it's the third person game, because you are watching her, you're not, her necessarily. And this other presence only appears as a kind of screen effect, as almost like a kind of monochrome kind of kaleidoscope that sort of fades in from the edges of the screen very, very occasionally to show you that something's watching, basically. But, she talks and she's talking to a character saying like, maybe this is the time to say, but no.
It's like, there's a scene where she's talking to a character and she's sort of debating as to whether to tell her that she's getting messages from the dead director. And she tells her that, and then afterwards says, but I'm not ready to tell her about you yet. Like, okay, so I think there are 3 different presences in her head at any given time.
Yeah, right. There's a bunch of stuff that is, like, I don't know, I find it quite charming in a way. Like, it's been a while since I've sort of played a single player game that is this sort of invested in setting up its own fiction.
Yeah.
And it's obviously super in love with a lot of different kinds of movies and things like that. Like, there's so much Lynch in it. It's kind of unbelievable. And maybe the idea of trying to create like a macro fiction to contain all of that stuff is not something people need hugely. I think
Max Payne set in the same universe as this? Is this something there?
I'd love that if that was the case. What his object of power is,
well, I guess pill bottles.
Yeah.
But that game existed in a sort of fringy sort of, not quite paranormal, but slightly paranormal. There's like angels and demons.
Yeah, pretty much.
People hallucinate, but do they really?
Yeah.
And, everything's called, I think you go to a nightclub called Ragnarok and the drugs are called Valkyr or something like this. Everything is, Nordic legend.
I don't know. Is it just nostalgia that makes me love that? Like, cause I loved those games at the time, but there's part of it that's...
I hated it at the time. I really like diving in slow motion though.
Yeah. This coat has been imbued with the power of diving sideways.
I'd buy that coat.
Yeah. No, it's good. Pleasant surprise. And looks nice as well.
Is it? So maybe this is a feature of its poor marketing, but like, I got the impression that it was like a sort of filler project for them. That this was like almost a moon crash sized piece of DLC for a game that doesn't exist.
I've played it quite a lot. It might be short. I don't know.
I'm happy if it is short because I don't have a lot of time.
It doesn't feel short.
Right. Okay.
I definitely got the impression like they spent enough on the marketing that it's got to be a main game.
Oh, okay.
I don't think so. I think its only weakness it's shown so far is I played a lot of it, and apart from that one expanding basic set of enemies, it hasn't really shown me anything else. And I think that's a bit of a issue with, I don't know, as kind of cosmic horror or, sort of science horror or whatever you call it, it's sort of in territory where it can't show half the things it's trying to describe, really.
Energy beasts come out, all things that are really
and that's kind of, we've talked about this on the podcast before, but that is like the old problem of trying to do these sorts of stories in games where you don't really want to have the gunfight with Cthulhu at the end. But that is how the actual Call of Cthulhu story does end. They do run him over with a boat, and everyone lives happily ever after. Really? People forget that that's the end of Call of Cthulhu. Yeah,
is it?
It kind of is. So Call of Cthulhu is one person reading something, right? And the people at the bottom of that are the people who find Cthulhu, and they run him over with a boat. Oh. And then it filters back up, and everyone gets murdered.
Is it bigger than a boat?
No, well, they ram it into his head, and it bursts, and he sinks back down to the bottom of the ocean.
Okay. Fair enough.
That literally is what happens in H.P. Lovecraft's The Call of Cthulhu. But this is always the issue, right? Like, as soon as you get to that stage, it's like, can we fight it with guns? If no, not good video game.
See, that's what I like about Destiny, where it's totally like, okay, you are fighting these multi-dimensional kind of robot AI things, but they're also just sparky things that are really nice to hit with bullets.
Yeah. Also, your bullets are maybe infused with some sort of paradimensional kind of creation power that means that, this is a bit like having a debate with it, really.
Yeah, but also you are loading up your
Isn't
shotgun.
it, in a sense?
You do, I mean, I fucking love that bollocks. It's complete bollocks, but yeah, I mean, the whole, half the hype stuff in Destiny is about the point that, like, if you defeat them in their own dimension, then you actually prove them wrong semantically, and therefore they don't exist.
Yeah, in your face.
Because they exist because their own, axiom is that only victors exist. If you are defeated, you cease to exist. So if you defeat them through the medium of guns, then you have somehow won a cosmic victory as well as a practical gun-based victory.
Yeah, it's like
I feel
fighting the internet with a shotgun.
Yeah, exactly. In David Cage's Fahrenheit. It feels like, because you sort of one enemy faction, I'd love it to start throwing other things in there, or weirder threats. I haven't really done that yet. It's done one thing where it plays with your perception so far that I've seen, and that was sort of off the beaten track a bit. So it feels like a little bit of a missed opportunity, because otherwise you're just throwing TVs at people in an office.
Sounds good.
Yeah, but no, pretty good.
Early on, I was walking through. I hadn't got the gravity gun power or anything supernatural. But I was walking past some desks, and they obviously, I think physics is not meant to be turned on yet properly, but just for these 3 desks it was. And when I walked into them, like big, heavy, like mahogany desks, and the top would just sort of slide off as I walked into it. And the drawers would sort of like swivel out. I've got physics enabled on me briefly.
So, do some questions?
Yep.
All right.
Sure. Okay.
Matthew writes, "Hi, Craters. Do you have any mobile game recommendations for PC gamers? By that I mean something with a little more depth than the usual mobile fare of match 3 and reaction-based games. Cheers, Cooksey."
No. Well, those aren't the kind of games that I play on mobile. They're the ones that would be deep, in inverted commas, for PC gamers. I mean, there are some great games on mobile, though.
Yeah.
Meteor Fall is like a Slay the Spire, simplified Slay the Spire, and it is fun.
There are 2 mobile games that to me stand out as they crying out to be on PC. One is Hoplite.
Yeah, Hoplite.
Oh, yeah.
Hex-based, turn-based roguelike with really cool mechanics.
Did you read about the person doing all the achievements?
Yeah, that was really good.
Yeah.
Somebody, the achievements required to do absurd things to Hoplite. Like go through it without taking any upgrades at all and speedrun it and then complete it 3 times, but without ever using the same skill twice. So your first build, you can't use any of those skills in your second
And you got
build.
to get to level, it's not just completing it, you got to get to level something or other. It's not, it's like getting really
29
deep.
or something.
Yeah.
That's a really good game. And the other one is Imbroglio, which I think there actually is a PC
is on PC,
version,
isn't it?
but it's a really rudimentary one. Maybe.
Huh.
I'm thinking of Cinco Paus, has a very rudimentary PC version where like because it's a touch controls game and then the mouse version of it is an awkward translation of that. Imbroglio, I actually don't think I have played on PC.
I would also add that a lot of mobile games and casual games are the most hardcore games that exist in terms of the time investment that they elicit from people. So I'll put that there as a caveat. There's such thing as a casual game, really, to be honest.
Yeah, every day I like to play the New York Times crossword.
Let's talk about the New York Times crossword.
The hardcorest of all hardcore games. Made more hardcore if you're British and you don't know who a golfer was in 1940, which seems to be...
Yeah, well, it's or the nickname of a football, a college football team or basketball team. I actually started doing it. It's funny. I've met so many people recently, it seems, who do the New York Times crossword, particularly because the app is good.
Yeah, the app's really good.
And
It's too expensive though.
It's like $2 a month.
Really? What? No, it's like 40 quid for a year.
What, just for the crossword?
No, the
Isn't
crossword gets you a bunch of other stuff. One of which is probably worth $40 for a year, but we'll get to that.
Really?
I'm pretty sure it's like $2 a month.
Maybe it is here. Maybe just if you're buying it through the App Store in the States or something.
Yeah, because I subscribe on the website.
Interesting.
I think you made a boo-boo.
Do you? Well, sir.
How dare you? The New York Times crossword is great if you love discovering that the answer is Tsar again.
Yeah, or Oreo.
Why is it good? Other than crosswords are nice.
It's nice and it's fast. It's timed. There's a tactile sense to the way you put in the words. Like the filling out of the crossword is quite well catered for through the interface.
You can tab through it in an interesting way if you're doing it on a keyboard.
Yeah, you can kind of switch back and forth between verticals and horizontals in a nice way. And there's actually a strategy to that. So if you think you're going to get stuck on the first word, maybe you switch to the downs and because I compete for time with my girlfriend on this. So, if you think you can't get the first word on the horizontals, you switch to the downs and maybe you can then just nail all of the downs really quickly, but then, so there's, the whole thing. There's a whole thing.
So do you do it competitively?
I mean, I'm not good at it.
Sounds
she
like it.
always wins. She always wins.
Pip and I, it's a wholly cooperative experience. We sit there out on my laptop and we do it together.
Oh, these are the daily minis I'm talking about.
The minis.
So yeah,
Oh.
if and unfortunately I have really fat fingers and my screen is very inaccurate, so it's rare that I get sub 30 seconds on the daily mini.
Yeah, 35 would be where I hover, I think.
Yeah, she's like getting 12 seconds.
Are these cryptic crosswords?
No, it's normally crosswords. But the thing that's amazing about the New York Times package of puzzles is spelling bee. And it's one of the greatest puzzle designs ever made. There are, competing...
That is a really huge claim.
Yeah, I'm just like, clearly spat out some rum there. What?
No, I mean, in a way which is perfectly tailored to my tastes. So it's about words, obviously. You have a collection of letters,
Not
and there's
bees.
a letter in the center. You need to make as many words from that collection of letters as you can. You have to use the center letter, and you can use all of the peripheral letters as many times as you like, going back and forth.
It's like Boggle on that.
It's like Boggle.
Yeah.
It's like Quantum Boggle.
Quantum Boggle.
Well,
Fuck
there
me.
you
Okay,
go.
here we go. You
don't
ain't
know
even
why they
say
didn't
it was
go with
Quantum Boggle.
But I find it incredibly compelling. I really want to make a version of it which is very similar, but you're rewarded possibly for the obscurity of the words based on their tracking on Google's
that'd
word
be
frequency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want hipster points.
Yeah.
So that would be a meta Quantum Boggle game.
Indeed, yeah. I don't know which, that's beyond dimensional.
Do you find that the main New York Times crosswords, because they start off easy on a Monday?
Is that one cryptic?
No.
Really?
No, neither of them are cryptic.
What the hell?
They do
I thought
cryptic
all
crosswords.
crosswords were
No, they're just
cryptic.
quizzes, really.
Yeah.
Is the UK Times crossword main one
Yes.
cryptic?
Yeah.
maybe
I don't really
that's
like
something
cryptic crosswords, personally. Cryptic cross, yeah.
Yeah, me neither.
Um,
I
never
love
learned how to do
cryptic
them.
crosswords. They're the best.
like sometimes there'll be like a cryptic element, like a puzzle that is sort of like, I think today's, have you done today's?
Today's New York Times.
Main crossword.
No, just the mini.
Do you want me to kind of spoil the puzzle element?
Yeah, go for it.
So the puzzle element is like, there are a bunch of them that are in italics, and one of them's like bird in the hand, and one is ace in the hole. These are the clues. And then you realize that each of those lines those lines on the crossword has circles in it as well as squares. And then you realize that, the way it works is the whole answer is a phrase, but the circled sections will spell out an answer to the first word. So bird in the hole was like, ace in the hole, bird in the hole. Bird in the hand is something like, hired person, and then the circled letter spell out heron. So you have heron in the
God's
hired
sakes.
person, which is bird in the hand.
Oh, God.
Like it's that sort of, as they sort of like puzzle elements to it. It's not always successful, and they do get harder over the course of the week, which means that you get progressively sadder over the course of the week. So it's produced some useful shorthand for I feel more like a Monday now than I really can't deal with a Saturday 45 minutes sad crossword. It does make a good noise when you win.
Key feature.
And actually, the secret best feature of the New York Times crossword, the greatest mobile game, is actually you do it most on the web app, to be honest. But you can go on, there's usually an article about the day's crossword, with that crossword. So this is what the tricky ones were this week, and this is how this was designed.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's very, very light touch. And then.
Is that by Will Shorts?
Yeah. Oh, nemesis. And then in the comments for that, if you load up the comments, you just get this very, very long thread of very, very old American people wishing each other a nice day.
Aww.
It's really sweet. And occasionally, but this is the thing about casual games being the secretly most hardcore games. You can get a streak and you can keep, if you beat the crossword every day on the day that it comes out, you get a streak. So you can't artificially create a streak. You have to be there every day to do it. And we're kind of maintaining 4 or 5 day streaks at the moment because you usually get to Thursday or Friday before you cop out and use the auto check feature. Because you can do it where it will just highlight you've got the word right, letter right. So you can, it allows you to brute force things you don't know. The other form of cheating is to Google something, but that's only allowed if it's an American sports team you have no idea about. And so normally it's 5 day streak, then reset, then 5 day streak, then reset. But you get people on the comments who are like, weather was terrible this morning and the dogs are barking loudly again. However, I've managed to get up to day 752 on my streak. These fucking Midwestern crossword machines that, it's quite sweet, really. It's kind of nice.
Yeah, we do them cooperatively, but offline. So we actually bought a book of 1001, which is an intimidatingly large number of these crosswords, and unfortunately they're not organised by the day, so you have no idea what difficulty you're going to get, and they go back to sometime in the 60s, I guess. So it's referencing people who were a Hollywood belle in the 1930s for 2 films. And I have no idea about that stuff. I do not know who was pitching for the Red Sox, if that is indeed a team name. I'm just making it up, in 1958.
You made up the Red Sox?
Didn't you just live in New England for a while?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. Next question is an interesting one. Not one I'm not sure we're totally going to be able to answer, to be honest, but we'll certainly read it out. Which is, Dear Noun and Circle, I'm disabled, primarily quite severely dyspraxic, and have been thinking about how to represent disability in games. One of the issues I've come across is that a game that is ludonarratively coherent. Do we drink on ludonarrative coherence?
Yeah.
I haven't done this in a while. I.e. being based around the frustration of living in an inaccessible world, would not be accessible to a range of disabled people, as Celeste without assist mode or Bennett Foddy are. And we believe that means getting over it there, not the man Bennett Foddy. Otherwise, the gameplay would not be very engaging. I'm having trouble framing this as a question other than design my game idea, but have you played or do you think there are any possibilities for games that explore disability sincerely?
Yeah, I can't think of any, but I'm also sort of not qualified to judge whether a game, accurately represents that experience.
I can imagine lots of really bad ways of doing it.
Yeah, but I am, the idea is really interesting. I want to play a game.
Yeah, a second idea, maybe none of us in the room are qualified to judge what would qualify as success in this regard. What I would say that I thought was interesting about this is what games do the vast majority of the time really is portray super ability. Right? Either through, you literally have, freedom of movement and powers and capabilities that you would never have in real life or are impossible in real life. Or they make things that are technically possible in real life sort of so easy and effortless that they are superhuman. If you're playing Guild Wars and you sprint across an entire zone, that is not something the vast majority of human beings can do. Right? Things you take for granted in games, like jumping pretty high on command and running as much as you like. These are, games are full of, superhuman abstractions, basically, that create the verisimilitude, a sense of verisimilitude, because your mind blanks out the actual pain and physical stress that any of these things would cause your actual body. Does that make sense? You're always,
I kind of see it in a slightly different way in that in games you usually are aware of what you can't do. Like games are quite sort of, because often they're an ability you haven't got yet, or that you need to solve something in order to get to the thing that's kind of being dangled, or, it's often used, like the inability to get something is usually part of the progression in a game. And I think that is maybe the start of maybe something that could reflect a disabled experience. The problem is that games then usually cathartically then give it to you, which is kind of seems the way, and like often, so there's the standard kind of, the standard for that kind of design would be Metroid or something, where you start the game, like the story has you in a super powerful suit, and then all your powers are taken from you, and that is meant to give you the impetus to then,
and then you
like,
get them back.
You know what you've lost, and therefore, you get them back, and then some more. And like, and the whole gating system of needing the ability to get up the wall to get to the item that you can see out of reach.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost antithetical to everything that games normally try and do, which is, both, cast you as super powerful, but also make you gain powers and make it, you can always, any shortcoming you have can always be overcome by just level up enough and then you can bypass it. And that's in, non-interactive mediums, that's sometimes a harmful trope with disabled characters who, through some sci-fi magic, they
gain a superpower
able again, and then that fixes them, and that's
Or I suppose the counterpoint to that is disabled characters in fiction who gain a superpower that compensates for the disability in a different way, like someone who's wheelchair bound but psychic, or any of those cliches.
It'd be hard to think. I know there have been some examples of games where characters have been at least disempowered, if not explicitly disabled, but it's always referred to that as something which is a tangible negative. I can't think of a game in which represents disability, in which that represents that disability truthfully, but also doesn't disempower that character.
Right.
Yeah, because you're kind of skirting frustration, like in pure sort of like, if games are meant to be fun territory, like you're basically, in the way that we're looking at this, and maybe that's what needs to be surmounted. Like we need to look at it in a really different way. But like in this mode of thought, you are dealing with making a game frustrating.
Yeah. The other thing about this is really crucial is, disability is fundamentally relative, right?
Yeah,
disability is to do with environment, because it's, like if you have like a motive disability, but you're in an inaccessible building, then that is an issue. Mm-hmm. But it is not an issue if you're in a building that's accessible to you. And the issue with games is that most games levels, regardless of what the theme of the game is, are designed to, match the verbs that the protagonist is capable of executing, right? Like, regardless whether you're in a Deus Ex level or a Mario level, you have a set of verbs and the level is designed with that in mind. And normally it is the, NPC characters in the environment who are more out of place than you are. Like, I don't want to reach too far with this analogy, but like, if you're in a Mario level, everyone else has a kind of fixed behavior and is limited to a certain set of patterns, but you have the kind of movement vocabulary to do everything in that level and go everywhere because you are the master of it. So, if a game was to meaningfully represent the experience of being disabled, I would presume you would need to flip that. You would need to have AI characters that had full mastery of the environment, where it was designed for them, and everything was sort of familiar to them and at the right level for them and safe for them, but everything was dangerous for you and hard to do for you. Or, or simply impossible in some ways. And that's a much harder thing to achieve because it requires that your AI characters then have loads more agency,
I should mention that there are a bunch of games that try to simulate being blind.
Oh, yes.
I was going to mention, like, Unfinished Swan.
The names of any of them?
Unfinished Swan is one of them.
There was that Totally Audio one.
Yeah.
Years ago. Do you remember what that
I just realised that
there was what was the Kickstarter one where you sort of see the sound waves and they kind of...
Oh, yeah.
Sangre?
Yeah.
Is that a thing?
I think that might be out of League of Gentlemen.
Okay.
No, that's Papa Lazarou.
No, that's Papa Lazarou. Oh, thank God.
I think you're right.
Sangre, I think, is a word in the thing that we're going for.
That's probably the title somewhere.
That was.
I think you're right, Mosh. I think you're right.
Papa Sangre.
No, that's,
You see, that's exactly what I was trying to avoid, Alex.
the thing I was going to say is, it's weird to me that The Unfinished Swan and Untitled Goose Game are both games. You know?
Yeah. Isn't it?
Weird. Make you think. But yeah, no, seriously.
I was going to say actually that
Thank you.
to append, as we said at the start, like we are not qualified for this, and maybe it's interesting for the writer of this question to hear our perspective on it, because it might be that the things we assume that should be or could be like communicated through a game like this are about the inability to be in an environment where, you know, I'm sure there are many experiences that kind of actually are about celebrating or just portraying a life which extends beyond our assumptions that it's somehow kind of, you know, limited.
I always wanted to play in, so actually here's a thought, because I realized I want to play an RPG where you can't read. Where text doesn't mean anything to you. Where you don't have the kind of magic translation power that like something like, my mind's gone completely blank, Inkle, Heaven's Fall gives you. You know, there's no sort of gamification layer around learning to read. It's just, oh shit, you gotta learn to read.
Well, then actually, like your RPGs maybe do this because, you know, your build in any well-balanced RPG means that you literally can't do lots of stuff in the world, but there are other ways to do it.
Perception is the name of the game I was thinking of where you're blind.
Cool.
I'm surprised there aren't colourblindness games. I mean, there's colourblindness modes in games.
It's a game called Hue, which does that about colourblindness?
Isn't that just a game where you can't play?
It's a game where you can't play if you are colourblind.
Oh. So literally the opposite.
Oh well. Well, it's making a statement of sorts.
Oh god.
Jesus. Next up, Mike writes, Dear CNC, you've been kidnapped by a wizard.
Oh no.
Again?
He has imprisoned you in a tower and offers you a choice. To occupy your time, you can play the games of one developer, both those already released and any that they release in the future. Which developer do you choose and why? I feel like obviously we've answered variants on this question several times in the past because it's the Desert Island disc kind of thing. But I thought the thing that is interesting about this angle is developers you think you can trust to keep making games you want to play in the future necessarily. Because it's interesting because that cuts out almost all of what I would say were my favorite games necessarily or favorite studios.
To me, it was my first instinct is like pick a developer that's really consistently made great games. Like I want to say sort of Introversion or Subset games. And definitely it's hard to sort of think about missing out on their future games. But actually, that's not really if I'm practically having to answer the question. My answer is probably Ubisoft.
Yeah, because you just get
I want
loads.
all the fucking Far Cry's, all the fucking Assassin's Creeds.
Right. Yeah, with Subset, you know, with all the love in the world. You know, you're going to be waiting a while between games.
Right. Yeah, I was going to mention Ubisoft in this as well. I don't think they're my choice, but it's interesting that they're like the only studio system that's big enough to kind of claim a single identity for almost all of their products.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're games that are consistently 8 out of 10 enough.
Just a lot of 8 out of 10s.
A little of rum there.
It feels a bit of a cheap choice because there are, you know, how many studios? Like 15 different studios all over the world. And
yeah, it's like 12,000 people or something.
Yeah. It's a sort of quirk of corporate structure that they can be counted as one developer. But
I feel like there's a loophole and you've used it.
It's
Why
like
not?
the one, there's a few I was going to suggest. My other sort of AAA kind of answer would be Bungie. Because I don't really think they've made a duff game. And the stuff they're making now, I can kind of trust that I would continue to enjoy Destiny probably forever.
Yeah.
But the other answer that sprang to my mind on this, which I wasn't expecting, was Larian.
wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of mileage in those games.
There's a lot of mileage in those games, and they keep making better games than the one they did previously. Like at the moment,
That's true.
Like, at the moment,
But the other ones, like, you play the latest new one and you'll think, oh god, the old ones.
I think Original Sin 1 and 2 are both great.
Yes, okay.
And so I think you're inheriting a big pile of prior Divinity games that I don't know if I give a fuck about.
But still, like, only, like, 400 hours for you to completely explore, probably, those two games. And then, the future's unknown. I mean, I'm sure they're going to make another 2, at least, good games before
Baldur's Gate 3 is on the way.
Absolutely. But, like, the unknownness of game development will eventually kind of consume that as a possibility.
Right, but aside from Tom's loophole,
who is immune to that?
Like we're talking about subset, which means you're talking about 2 games and then another 5 years till the next.
Well,
Bethesda could be another choice.
Huh?
Bethesda.
Oh yeah.
All the Fallouts, all the Skyrims.
Sorry. This came out of me. I don't know why that strange honking noise.
Yeah. Bethesda's, because it's like Bethesda's publisher or Bethesda is...
No, it has to be developer, I think.
It has to be developer. Arcane is just
Arcane,
before
Arcane's not bad.
I don't even know what the next thing is. Like, I saw a trailer for it and I don't really know
This is the thing.
if it's the thing I want.
Bungie's a good call. Bungie's a really good call.
Yeah, I could have it in this hours just,
doing the nice shoot.
Yeah, doing the good shoots, being Gun of Justice to...
Doing the good shoots.
Time gun.
To Rich's Scotch Fox.
Yeah.
That's the dream, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm surprised no one said Rockstar. I'm not surprised.
I'm sitting on... I cannot bring myself to play Red Dead Redemption, and
I've tried.
I think I talked about it in a very positive way since I last played it, and I just, like, I sit down in front of the telly and I think, no, I'll play something else.
Yeah. I've just got a new PlayStation and just looking at like which saves I'm going to transfer. I almost just didn't even transfer the saves.
Oh god,
I don't think
it's
I'm
like
ever going to play it
500k.
again.
Nah, fuck it.
just the effort. You just got to like, it's just another step to the process. And I was like, am I ever going to play this again? Even though I'm only like 10 hours into it or something, and that's like 0.01%.
All I think about is the time it takes to start accelerating to full walking speed. I think, oh god, I feel so exhausted.
If you were trapped in a tower by a wizard, would that be fun?
Yeah.
Wait, are there other stipulations? Do we get the games or what?
No.
just the tower.
Would it be fun to spend time with a wizard?
Yeah.
How antagonistic is the wizard?
I mean, he's trapped you there.
How does the wizard's
How friendly can
wizardry
he be?
otherwise manifest itself?
Other than kidnapping people and
Yeah, I mean, that's
subjecting them
not
to
a great trick, is it? I mean,
Can the wizard serve as a consultant on my game about wizards? I could do with some practical advice.
Yeah, sort of enigmatic kind of wizard consultant. Would you accept that consultancy if the price was you get locked in a tower and you can only play?
Well, I mean, isn't that life though? Being so it's just you're exchanging one tower for another, Tom.
Just a very short, wide tower that I can leave at any time. Called a house. Actually, since I said it, I now think that actually having a real wizard consultant would just be a pain in the ass. That just be like, oh, no, you can't do that. It doesn't make any sense. That's not how magic works. Shut up. It's a fun game mechanic. I picked magic so I could do whatever the fuck I wanted.
So did I, says the wizard, teleporting you into a tower. Yeah, no. Emil writes, "Hi. I recently did Tom F's thing
Oh no!
and read a bunch of
my
negative
thing.
Steam reviews for some of my favourite games.
Is that what you do, Tom?
I did do that for Spelunky and Into the Breach. It was informative. Listen to a previous podcast if you'd like to know about the results.
I think I was there.
I found that one of the most common complaints about the Dishonored games was that people had a bad time because they played a playstyle they didn't enjoy in order to get a certain ending to the story. Emil goes on to sort of explain, obviously, that, I think we've talked about this on the podcast plenty of times, but Dishonored somewhat punishes you with a bad ending for using all of the options it provides you, and if you play non-lethally, then you get the good ending. He goes on to write, my theory for explaining this is that most people prefer happy endings, and that playing a game for 8 hours without enjoying the gameplay and then having the last 5 minutes of the story be good is actually worse than enjoying the game for 8 hours and then being disappointed by the last 5 minutes of story. Personally, I'm lucky enough to not suffer from any of these problems since I don't care about the story. But I can understand that it's a common complaint if you do. My question is having multiple endings just bad? And if you do have multiple endings, is it bad to have the gameplay affect it? Cheers. Neil.
Yes. That's my opinion. No, I mean, the Dishonored example is a good one, and it's, I remember Jedi Knight. Like, that game was like, do you want to be a light side Jedi or a dark side Jedi? And all the dark side powers are super cool, and I went for them. And then the end more or less just says, you were wrong. Like, it just shows you like miserable and alone. And fair enough, that's like a reasonable narrative consequence for going to the dark side, but it just kind of sucks. Like,
I think the Jedi Knight, it kind of gets away with this though, because the light side powers are fun as well. Like, it's not like the difference between I can only use the non-lethal axe throw and I can't do anything else. It's like,
that's true.
You know, light side powers are like, you get things like, well, because the thing with that is like you get things like healing and,
Are we talking about Jedi Knight 1 here?
Oh, I'm actually thinking about Jedi Academy, I just realized. Because I was thinking about, you get like healing and mind trick and stuff like that, which...
Yeah, I can't really remember what the light side powers were in Jedi Knight 1.
Because then the neutral powers like push and pull and stuff. So you still get that.
Those are really cool.
Those are neutral. Like, the point is, in Star Wars, pushing someone into a big fan is a neutral act.
Oh, because the fan done it.
Yeah, the fan did that, so you don't bear any culpability.
So electricity, super evil.
Electricity, evil. Choking, evil.
But like fucking Obi-Wan, you know, mind fucks people. Like, it's just totally, you know, controlling their thoughts and making them believe that.
That's good though, Tom. That's good.
That's positive.
That's good.
Not just neutral. That's actively positive.
That's good. Yeah.
But isn't that all part of the idea that the Jedi are really hypocrites? And actually, I don't know.
In my,
But it sounds like the end.
From my point of view, the Jedi are evil.
Yeah.
I mean, KOTOR,
I take a point. Basically, like the Dishonored has less of an excuse for this stuff because it's kind of it sets you up to like, especially Dishonored 1. All the fun options basically leave you with a high chaos ending. I also find this whole thing poisoning all of my choices in all games. Like, even if the game itself is not going to be ultimately guilty of it, I don't know that yet. So every decision I make, I'm like, I would say B, but I think A is probably like the good ending option. So I think I just have to say A. Or like relationship stuff where like, if you don't say the right thing at the right time, this character is going to leave your party or whatever, or then you're going to be able to.
Haven't games kind of sort of not been so strong about the concept of good and bad endings? Like games more recently have been sort of, there are a number of endings and they are a consequence of what you did, and like it doesn't make such a sort of moral equivalence between them.
I think the key thing is like,
I mean, that would be the answer for doing it well anyway.
I've been thinking about this a bunch recently for various reasons, and one of them is that I think the key is, and I think this is the mistake Dishonored made, is an ending should always be the good ending for your character if you've won the campaign.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it was a good ending for everybody involved.
With Tom's example, he should have shown you, like, sort of having a gleeful time being a fucking bad
I was the Emperor. I fucking loves being the Emperor.
I was going to say, Knights of the Old Republic gets this right.
Yeah.
You know, if you go dark side in Knights of the Old Republic 1, you are, you know, you're basically cool Vader at the end, and you get to cool Vader about, and you get a big parade because you reinvent space fascism. Like, and that's, you know, you win, basically. Like, the ending of a video game should almost always be you win if that's the kind of game that it is. And, the issue I think with the Dishonored thing is, you do the thing, you beat the boss, you beat the final level, you achieve the thing, and given these games...
There were too many rats, Chris. You made too many rats.
But actually,
with magic.
Did you win? The answer is no. You lost because you did lose by...
Because the guy you knocked out slipped down 2 steps, and that counted as a kill. And therefore,
and it doesn't chaos. Like it's like you can't, you know, it's sort of funny to make this argument. Like, obviously, if you're making a game that is about taking you on a very specific narrative path, then I think you can get away with a sad ending or a downbeat ending. But you can't really moralize at the player in a game, I think, a certain extent because games are fundamentally sort of amoral environments in some ways. Like they're not real, and the decisions you make are not moral decisions a lot of the time. I think that's the sort of I think that's the flaw in. I think Dishonored works as fiction, but it doesn't necessarily embody that fiction well in the morality system simply because, you know, the truth is that it's asking you to invest very heavily in, these guards that I'm seeing walking around are real people and my actions carry the weight that real killing would carry, even though nothing about this environment bears that out, really.
I think I saw a GDC talk year before last, and it was the wrongest GDC talk I've seen in a while, and I've seen plenty of pretty wrong GDC talks, but it was by two aficionados of narrative design. I think one of them worked for David Cage, which should have been a warning sign, really. But anyway, they picked apart the ending of The Last of Us, and without particularly spoiling it, it has a bit of a downbeat ending. And they were like, well, wouldn't it be better if you had a choice over this? I was like, no, absolutely not. Because the entire narrative arc of that game is leading to this point. And if you give players a choice over it right at the end or whenever, you're just basically voiding an entire narrative trajectory that has been carefully set up.
Yeah,
and you can't just create narratives which have perfect symmetry, perfect meaning, regardless of which players choose. That just doesn't happen.
It's also a bit of a fucking crime where you've got a game.
Wow, okay.
No, literally.
I thought it was a bad talk, but I wouldn't have them arrested.
I will be. When the government comes back, I'm going to be petitioning for this.
Okay.
But yeah, it's, when you've got a game, games are fucking linear and they've asked you to do specific things, and you haven't had choices. And then, as you said, there's a certain arc that character has gone through.
Yeah.
Like, why give a fucking yes/no answer at the end? Like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, that has no meaning.
But their other illustration was turning Hamlet into a choice-based game, and you're like, no.
Is.
Well, I mean,
but
there is one.
Watching someone make choices.
Yes, but I mean, like,
it could be done
unless you're as good a writer as Shakespeare himself. I do trust yourself to create a completely parallel path to Hamlet, where he makes a series of different decisions which are as meaningful.
I've thought of the best video game, like the fucking Hamlet QTE, where he comes out and says, to be or not to be, and the fucking B input B, and you don't hit B in time.
Well,
he falls on his arse.
There is a new game.
Hamlet.
There is a new game which is about Hamlet, isn't there? Like, that just came out like a few weeks ago.
Oh, maybe
this is Elsinore.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's got moral choices.
It's completely possible to gamify the fiction of Hamlet. That's not a problem. It's just the idea that, by throwing in a choice somewhere, suddenly you would have something that's just as good as what Shakespeare wrote. No, you wouldn't. Idiot.
But the thing run an interactive theatre company where we added choice to Hamlet. I just realised that.
Oh, Chris.
Yeah, Elsinore, released in July, is a time-looping adventure game set in the world of Shakespeare's Hamlet, where it has strong social simulation elements, a dynamic story which reacts immediately to player decisions, and a world of diverse characters and secrets to uncover.
Stick it up your crud, Martin.
How about this?
And it has 8 out of 10 rating, apparently, after 14
8 out of 10. Read it and weep.
Whatever that
It's very good.
I think also there's a sort of a cynical aspect to the idea of giving these kind of choices where it's about replayability and not in the service of kind of, your playing experience. Because as you were alluding to, I get wrapped up in fucking, I want to get the end, I want to get the good ending.
Yeah.
As soon as there's any suggestion or you hear whispers of, if only you do this and this, then suddenly your whole play experience is kind of completely undermined.
So I didn't know this when I first started playing it. Fire Emblem, when there is going to be a choice that makes any fucking difference at all, it flags it up in the most like ostentatious way of just, this choice will drastically affect the rest of the game. And when you make it, it's like, are you absolutely sure you want to drastically affect the rest of the game? all right, yeah, I am. I kind of just wish they'd said that up front, like, because all the other choices I was agonizing about those. It's been like, oh, fuck it, this doesn't matter at all.
Yeah, this has put the dial up slightly less than it would have done on your relationship with somebody.
With your interactive Hamlet, though, is the thrill of that? I mean, there is a thrill to that. That's the point that you're doing. That you're reinventing something on the fly.
There are several key mechanics there that you finish the question, but yeah.
Well, no, that's it. I mean, you're not presenting the version of Hamlet you do as being as meaningful in the same way that Hamlet was.
Crucially, the audience doesn't know what play they're in.
Oh.
So that is the way of getting a real response out of people. So we would sell a ticket, but for a scenario that we would only tell the audience was derived from like classical tragedy. And then we would randomize the scenarios. So we had a version of essentially like Hamlet, Othello, Romeo and Juliet, etc. And we would also, gender swap on and off. So it would be much harder to tell like where things would end up. And then different audience members would be placed in different roles. So the idea is it would be very difficult for an audience member to game the system because even if you came back to the show multiple times, you're not guaranteed to see the same scenario twice, or have it be the same kinds of characters, or have it you be picked for a certain role. Which led to really interesting scenarios where you'd have, like the very first time we rented this theatre in North London somewhere, for the very first run. And on the first night, someone's extremely no-nonsense Scottish dad came. And he was sort of steered into a position where he was Hamlet, basically. And we basically would teach the audience gestures that represented killing, saving, these kinds of things, so that they could perform without needing to perform. Right? So the text was always produced by the actors. And then there's a sort of test there. If like you recognize the text as Hamlet, you get where you are. But our Hamlet, we started it a little bit earlier with a kind of representation of the slaying of old Hamlet. So that sort of happened live in front of everybody to give some context to the tragedy that follows, right? Introduce audience Hamlet, because that was the brave thing, was having Hamlet be an audience member rather than an actor. Audience Hamlet sees a character that they like, this friendly actor that they've been introduced to, slain, removed from the show in front of them, and then they're kind of encouraged to exact revenge for this, and we try and steer them into the same sort of decisions Hamlet makes, but allow them to make their own choices, like through improv and stuff. And that very first night, and that very first run of that particular scenario, this extremely down-to-earth, no-nonsense Scottish dad just saved old Hamlet. Just walked in and stopped it. Like, just stopped the slaying of old Hamlet, which stops Hamlet in its tracks. Like, Denmark is fine.
There is something fine in the heart.
Exactly. And so we basically ended the show after 15 minutes, because that was the idea. The idea was it would run for 20 to 40 minutes based on how it went. And so we just...
Then you had to adjust the new minimum.
Yeah, exactly.
That runs from 15 to 40 minutes.
Right, but it was actually genuinely amazing because it was genuinely reactive. But it was as in amazing to watch from our point of view, like just to see it kind of pan out that way. And you've also seen it be a bigger clusterfuck than Hamlet ever was. Like everyone dies. Like everyone kills everyone else. Like,
but those, I guess this is different is because you're working from a set where the entire chain of events is completely malleable.
Right.
And that's interesting because you're essentially throwing this accepted fiction in the air and then catching the pieces as they land.
Right.
Whereas the thing that he's talking about, I guess, in the question is...
like the reason it doesn't work is because Hamlet isn't about the ending. That's the point, right? Yeah. Like, and no story is about the ending. Story is about the choices that get made along the way, and then the ending is judged based on whether it feels right to those choices. And so you can do it you can do it two ways, I think. One way is you throw all the pieces in the air, and you see how they fall. And with those scenarios, all we were trying to do really is, what are the key verbs of this story? Yeah. And can we give a way of ritually performing those verbs? And then you just line them up. Mm-hmm. And then what are the themes and how do you embody them and through those actions? And then the other way of doing this is to set things up in advance. Like, I was thinking about this just now. Like, I think the way to do an actual, tragedy game where the audience had meaningful choice, or the player had meaningful choice over the unfolding of, a classical tragedy, would be to front load the decisions. So it'd be like programming, like, do you know like the Gambit system from Final Fantasy or from Dragon Age, right? Where you program an AI for how to respond to a combat scenario, right? You would have to play as old Hamlet's ghost. Or whatever kind of divine figure appears to fuck up the protagonist in a tragedy, right? I'm going to give you a vision, and this vision is going to fuck up your life or a prophecy or something, right? I'm going to tell you that, you won't die until, like, Burnham Wood marches to Dunsany, or whatever it is, and this is going to change your behavior in a particular way that leads to a complete fuck up. Because that's how most tragedies work, right? And so the idea would be, you program the AI of the protagonist through the construction of whatever your prophecy is, and then you just watch the story unfold as they hit scenario after scenario and behave according to the edict you've given them. And that would be your way of trying to steer them to, like, then the game would be, can you tell them something that gets them through this? Rather than something that leads to some, like, anagnorisis at the end and like...
Not to pile it on, but To Be or Not to Be is a choosable path adventure by Ryan North based on Hamlet.
Oh, I'm worried.
Which is not only a book but also available on Steam. You can play it as a computer game, and it has 110 endings. So there.
Well. I'm sure all 109 of them are as good as Shakespeare would have intended.
Well, I'm here and now announcing my Kickstarter for Hamlet Online. With a fucking end game that stretches all sorts of raids. You can...
Yeah. The ending where you take out Fortinbras with a gun.
Yeah, exactly.
It's amazing. It's amazing. An interdimensional gun, which is also a shotgun.
LFG4M Fortinbras heroic mode. I would say on the subject of endings, one last thing would going to be, this is, I think, the only defense of the Deus Ex ending room. Where you go into a big room. And the only reason I think this works, and I don't think it works, but if it did work, it would be for this reason.
If I did it, here's how it happened.
Yeah. It'd be, the reason that sort of works is, again, it maintains that thing of you win, but here's the ending. But also, I think game endings that have choice in them, or have multiple endings, work when they're more about letting the player choose what they thought the story was about, than whether or not they succeeded or failed.
Yeah.
So, like, what did you think this was really about? Was it about ridding the world of this kind of technology? Was it about controlling this technology? Was it about advancing this technology, which is the Deus Ex, the typical Deus Ex trio, really, which is the same is true of the Mass Effect series, actually.
Yeah.
Like, that's one of the reasons I think Mass Effect 3's ending was successful. It just needed the unpacking that came when they added this later, which was, it ends with, what did you think the solution was going to be? And all of the answers you pick are a solution. And there are bad things that happen a part of the ending and things are lost, but that's because it's the ending of a fucking story and people couldn't handle that.
Yeah.
Because big babies. But
until that point.
It's funny that Mass Effect 2 ended, I never thought about this before. Mass Effect 2 ends with a huge baby. But Mass Effect 3 ended with everyone being a massive baby.
They crowdsourced the baby.
Make you think.
And also, like, the big baby at the end of Mass Effect 2 was, like, crowdsourced from humans, right? It was like, they captured all the humans to make the
incredible. How's no one pointed this out? that game, they melted all the humans to make a massive baby. And at the end of the third game, all the humans melted to become massive babies. Incredible.
I do think that, Mass Effect in general was a good, so throughout the whole series, I was never making choices to try and get a certain ending. I was never making choices to try and get a certain romance. I was pretty much honestly answering the questions that it raised, which is really rare and a great achievement. Like, it was, I think it had just, it built a kind of trust in me where it's just, if you navigate this in a way that you think is right, you will end up with a result that makes sense for you and that will be interesting in its own right. Whereas other games where, if you don't say the right thing to this character at a certain time, they're just going to leave, or if you didn't do this, if you didn't play in a certain play style, you're not going to get the good ending and there's just a bad ending. That just sucks, because then you're making your decisions based on that rather than based on what you want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, your choice of Larian as a studio whose games you'd play, Divinity Original Sin 2's ending makes no fucking sense. Makes no fucking sense. Complete garbage. Sorry.
But
is this like, it makes no sense if you do a certain thing or just always?
I have no idea. I mean, because I can only experience it from the perspective of my 100-hour playthrough. Or
Which character
What were you?
did you pick? Like a story character
Were
or
you
a
a
custom?
skeleton? Were you a skeleton or were you a lizard?
I was a dwarf pirate.
You were the piratey dwarf.
Yeah.
Wow.
The only person.
Aye, Captain, I should say. Because that's exactly how he talks.
I'd have thought you'd gone for the lizard or skeleton.
Lizard and
I know.
skeleton.
Everyone went for the lizard or skeleton.
Yeah, I went for lizard.
I was a skeleton.
I banged the skeleton. It was pretty good. We never talked about it again, though. It was,
Who needs endings when you had that line?
yeah, exactly. But then a whole bunch of nonsensical shit happened towards the end, and then there was a whole lot of exposition. Bad things that I didn't want to happen happened, and then it almost exactly the opposite choice of the thing that I had made. The choice that I'd made seemed to happen. I was like, I don't know about that. It was poor. It was a poor Deus Ex moment, really. But it was like all loaded on the end, and unfortunately, just
Great. Oh no.
yeah. Well, no, not even that, but just like in the way that Deus Ex is, or any of the Deus Exes, where it just seems to hang on your final decision. A lot of that seemed to hang on your final decision, but then it just wasn't coherent, even as a result. Anyway, yeah. Sorry, it's bad.
That's all right. No, it's
So the things you like are bad. That's what I'm saying. I don't know.
Well,
I mean, what can you say to that? Other than, I'm just glad you managed to fuck a skeleton before everything went wrong.
Yeah.
It's the journey, not the destination that counts.
It's the skeletons we boned along the way. Gareth writes, Dear Creoles and Crawfish, in keeping with recent themes, I turn to you for your expertise in the sticky matter of outdated outerwear. After some long overdue weight loss, I'm about to break into a strata of t-shirts within my wardrobe that has not seen light of day for well over a decade. These archaic accoutrements feature such timely references as "the cake is a lie" and a scatological parody of old iPod adverts. Many of these clothing items have literally never been worn.
is that going to be I poo?
Probably, yes. Having been purchased in a haze of denial and seriously misplaced confidence that I would start losing weight, quote unquote, any day now. My question to you is simple. Am I permitted to wear these near-fossilized fashion items, or must I consign myself to updating my wardrobe lest I face the scorn and ridicule of others? I await your sage advice. Gareth.
No!
Well, I mean, if they make your body look good, and it sounds like your body already looks good.
I don't know if the iPod one is going to make the body look good. The iPod one is just going to raise questions about the character.
Yeah, fair point.
So I reckon a lot of this stuff is cyclical, right? Like
It's
things
like
become
cake and that. I reckon I got another 5 years before
I was going to say
cake
10.
I'm going to say 150.
Martin's is 1,000 years.
So here's the thing, right? Like we used to kind of cyclical pattern of pop culture where things like that will be kind of kitsch in 10 years or whatever, based on the kind of 20-year cycle that most of the things
I'm
are basically
seeing
on.
a very surprising kind of fashion on the streets at the moment, Christopher.
Alex,
I went into London the other day. I was surprised.
what did you see?
I saw
Beyond comprehension.
I saw denim being used in ways that I didn't think I'd ever see again.
All memories in time
Yeah.
fade like tears in the rain.
Anyway,
Yeah, I mean, well, the phenomenon that you've identified there, Alex, is time and children and the kids and what they're up to and how you feel about it. And the thing I think that's interesting about time in this particular case and the kids and what they're up to is that it's accelerating, right? Like a while ago, I was thinking about this while reading James Davenport's review of Borderlands 3 for PC Gamer, where he pointed out that game, his criticism of that game was rooted in the fact that its humor is in that kind of like, this meme's going to be around for ages kind of thing of the era these t-shirts are referring to, where people are making jokes about Portal for a good year after Portal comes out, because Portal's very funny. At the moment, the shelf life of a meme is about a day. You know, like, these things are dying faster and faster. Like, if you want to hit kids with a hot ironic reference right now, talk about Vine, a social media platform that is dead, but most of us probably think was recent. No, ancient history now, right? Like, this is increasingly difficult to do. Whether this means you should wear those t-shirts, the answer is obviously no. I have recently, and I think I talked about this on the podcast, had the experience of through moving house, having to go through every t-shirt I own and go, do I really meaningfully ever intend to wear this? And I found that quite a kind of vindicating experience. And I found myself now increasingly relieved to realize that at some point in the past I bought just like a grey t-shirt or a white t-shirt because then you do not have to carry a brand with you at all times. Basically.
And also you relieve yourself of any kind of decision making down the line. Oh yeah, that's fine still.
Yeah, those things remain fine forever. Like right now I'm wearing a Dota t-shirt that is extremely abstract. And
I would not have known that was a Dota
Yeah,
t-shirt.
I actually deciphered it sort of midway through the pod.
So it says Brooklyn Kurtz on it. And this is the Chinese mistranslation of a Dota character's name.
Fucking hell.
Where the character Clinks, the Bone Fletcher, was for some reason given the Chinese name Brooklyn Kurtz.
Brooklyn being like a jungle in which...
So this one has survived because if anyone understands that, then I'm probably going to be friends with them.
Yeah.
And if no one understands it, then it's fine because it's just shapes.
I think that an ironic iPod or Apple t-shirt
You're really hung
is
up on this
definitely
one.
wrong. That's wrong. That's wrong.
You're imagining it.
And the cake one, even if it came back, I think it would be bad to have.
It wasn't good at the
T-shirt.
time.
Yeah.
I don't think.
It's
Portal
also-
is a funny game, but that is not the,
Yeah, you're
laugh out
fucking
loud
right.
line.
This may
and it
be-
doesn't work
That
out of
was
context
the-
at all.
Yeah.
While we are in the business of bringing 2007 to account, which I feel like we've been for a while.
This was 12 years ago, by the
Yeah.
way. 12 years.
Oh my god. That is the least funny joke in Portal.
Yeah.
It just is. There are a lot of other jokes in Portal that are way better than that one.
That thing you just burned was the catalytic cracking unit. It made shoes for orphans. Nice job, hero.
So that's what it says on your t-shirt.
Finally, you can read it.
Yeah, literally a t-shirt that said nice job hero on it would be better than...
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, get a new wardrobe.
Yeah.
But congratulations on your...
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, but
Yeah, well
seriously, you know,
Reward yourself.
If anything, look at these bad past t-shirts as a sign of your mental growth as well as your physical growth.
yeah, this is... Yeah. Okay. I like that we're saying this, and I like that we went into I think it was appropriate that we went into the question about representing disability in games by saying that we in this room are not qualified to make these judgments. And yet somehow we felt qualified to offer fashion advice.
Well, that's because we have
Came to the
those,
right place, questioner.
it's because we have those t-shirts. It's our world.
Exactly.
It's our fucking...
Alex, speaking from the corner in jeans and a sort of olive drab kind of t-shirt, I guess.
I am dressed well, you're right.
Yeah, I am in jeans and a Brooklyn Kurtz 2 t-shirt.
Please don't describe me.
Marsh,
What?
a sort of
Marsh is wearing
pattern hoodie and a t-shirt with a space object on it.
dungarees. Red dungarees.
And jeans. And Tom, in jeans and a Steam t-shirt.
It's a
Cool
very
guys.
comfortable t-shirt.
Last time he was wearing the Steam t-shirt, he was trying to argue that Steam weren't bad.
Weird, that. This was free, by the way.
Nothing's free, Tom. And that's all the questions we've got time for. I'm very sad to say. If you'd like to send us a question for a future episode of the Crate and Crowbar, you can email us. Marsh, lips off the microphone. At questions at crateandcrowbar.com. I know it's
Pull
been
your
a while.
dungarees up.
I'm going to leave this house in a minute and then you can do what you like. But while I'm here, I feel like I retain some kind of symbolic office power.
I'll respect that.
Thank you. Questions at crateandcrowbar.com.
Sorry.
Bony like a skeleton. It's, you can tweet us at Twitter, fucking hell. Crate and Crowbar, Twitter, oh fuck.
That's what I said last week as a joke.
Twitter.com/Crate and Crowbar. YouTube.com/Crate and Crowbar is a different URL that will produce different results. Thank you as ever to our Patreon supporters, without whom podcasts simply not do. You can find out more information on the Patreon at patreon.com/Crate and Crowbar. And if you would like to find us on Twitter as individuals, you can do so if you must. I am on Twitter at cthurston. That's CTHURSTEN.
I am at rotational. I'm not doing his spelling.
Tom?
I am at Pentadact. PENTADACT.
And Marsh Davies?
That's the at that I am at, no less. Thank you.
And what do we say?
Bang 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 at the bar.